This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, gang? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Another day of waiting before the massive Game 5 tomorrow in a 2-2 tied series, best of 7 between the Blues and Jets. Tomorrow night, late night, 8:30, more like 8:52 at Canada Life Center. We've got a lot coming up today. We heard from Connor Hrabchak yesterday. There's been plenty of talk about the goaltending in this series. Figured this would be a great day to lean on our old pal Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, analyst, who's actually living in St. Louis and been paying very close attention to this series. So Mike is going to take a bit of time out of his busy day to join us. Coming up first off today, we'll find out what he's been seeing from Connor Hrabchak and what the Winnipeg Jets need to do to make his life a little easier and what Hrabchak needs to do to help his team win 2 more games in this series and move on to the second round. We'll also check in with Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. We'll probably talk mostly hockey with Hammer, but we will touch on a little bit of CFL stuff, and it's a big CFL day. The global draft's been going on this morning, and then tonight, earlier than planned, the CFL draft is going to go. It's been moved up 2 hours from 7 p.m. our time to 5 p.m. our time because of the Leafs-Sens game. So if you are a CFL draftnik wondering what the Bombers are going to do on the clock at number 6 and with 2 second-rounders, you'll definitely want to stick around for our draft preview with John Hodge of 3 Down Nation. Big practice today for the Jets as well. Gabriel Vilardi was on the ice. We will hear from Vilardi a little later on. And we'll also hear from Connor Hrabchak and Lyss Houde with the practice report from the Hockey for All Center a little bit later on today on WST. So a lot to talk about today, a packed show. Great to have you all with us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and give a little thumbs up for the show today. And as always, we welcome all of your comments in the chat for those of you that are with us on YouTube. And of course, podcast listeners, we love you too. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk and where they can find us. Listen, just before we bring in Michael Remis, I got to thank the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Our partners at Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Prairie Toyota Dealers, KFC, Ben Moss, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Rollies Transfer, St. Vital Dental Center, Let's Do It Travel, Aikens Lake, Wilderness Lodge, F Apparel, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Bend, fansfirst.ca, and of course we'll get to a Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's get her going, Remo. How are you today? Where's your head at as we get closer to, as I called it yesterday, maybe the biggest gut check that this team has had as a collective group in a very long time?
Yeah, check our Instagram reel. I tried to put your intro to cinematic, epic music. It's like you're cutting a promo for the game and what it could mean for the franchise. So check our Instagram reels or TikTok, Facebook, all that. But I'm feeling good. You know, people ask me, what did I think about the game? And I said, well, I think that the Jets are tied 2-2 with home ice advantage. And, you know, you've had a couple days to sit on it. And, you know, people in our comments, a lot of them Blues fans who have discovered our show over the last couple days, thanks to the almighty algorithm, saying the Jets are cooked, they're done. I was like, they're not done. People are like, the series is over. I'm like, it's not over. They're tied. Last time I checked, tied 2-2. So, again, they say series isn't over until the home team loses. I think that would apply here, the Jets would be in a very tough spot going down to St. Louis. Well, it technically wouldn't be over, but hey, they can hold serve here, as we say, with a win, and looks like they're getting some reinforcements back and some other positive news from this morning's skate as well. So the sun is shining. It's getting warm. I'm in a good mood here, and great to see everyone in chat.
Yeah, we did have some good news from morning skate, which we'll get to in just a minute. I see Sean Holm in chat saying the late start time for a Central Division game in Manitoba is a complete joke. Listen, it's not ideal, but Sean, I mean, that is life in the Central Division around this time of year. I mean, the Jets were fortunate not to have any Wednesday games at 8:52 p.m. during the regular season. Dallas did, Minnesota did, and that is for national television. These TV stations pay a ton of money for these rights, and unfortunately, especially in the first round, you've got multiple series in the East going early. The West games are going late. Central Division gets pushed there. So the fact that, the St. Louis Blues had that for game 3 last week in St. Louis, we're going to have it here in Winnipeg. And whatever time the puck drops, the Winnipeg Jets are going to need to be ready.
And people say, they're showing no respect to the President's Trophy winners. Well, the Stanley Cup champion, Florida Panthers, had a game at home with an 8:30 start time. So they don't care where you are. They just want it in order for TV. So I don't know how much more we need to touch, but occasionally you have people in chat bitching about start times. They are what they are here.
Well, let's get to it. And again, we'll have a practice report from Connor and Lyss a little bit later on for you. But before practice even started today, Remis, there was a lot of talk about what was happening at the Hockey for All Center, because guess who was out on the ice skating? Yeah, Nikolai Ehlers. Now, before any of us get too excited about Ehlers' availability, just know that it is highly, highly unlikely that Ehlers will be a possibility at any point in this first round series. He's not skating with the team. He will apparently take tomorrow's morning skate in a non-contact jersey. It is a great sight to see Ehlers out on the ice. But as I said, and listen, we haven't dwelled on, how big of a hole he is in the Jet lineup, because there's nothing you can do about it. And this team is going to have to find a way to beat the St. Louis Blues in all likelihood without Nikolai Ehlers. But it was great to see him on the ice, and the prospect of Ehlers returning at some point in the playoffs, if the Jets can stay alive long enough, is a pretty exciting one for Winnipeg Jet fans. In the short term, though, Remis, we've all but got confirmation that Gabriel Vilardi will be good to go and will play tomorrow night. Much like Ehlers' return, Gabe can't come back soon enough for what he can do along with Scheifele and Connor, as well as on that Winnipeg Jet power play that hasn't been as big of a factor in the playoffs as it's been throughout the regular season. So good news on Nikolai that he's coming along. Great news that Gabriel Vilardi's a player for Game 5 for the Winnipeg Jets.
And for all of us here sitting here thinking that Nikolai Ehlers was his first skate back, Scott Arniel revealed that while the Jets were in St. Louis, he was here having secret skates on his own. Murat Atesh was on here, I think, last week and wrote in The Athletic over the weekend that he expects Ehlers back, late second round, early third, if they get that far. So I don't know if this advances the timeline. As you said, he is skating tomorrow in a yellow non-contact jersey. I do remember the time he came back for Game 5 against Vegas. What was that, the rib injury? And he was very clearly not 100%. So I'm curious how they approach this one. We'll monitor going forward. And yes, Gabe Vilardi back practicing on the power play with Scheifele, Connor, Perfetti, and Morrissey. So he's on the top line. He's practicing in the regular blue jersey with those guys. Great to see, and what a boost it would be for a team that has scored 3 goals in the last 2 games to have what he brings on the power play as well, 2 for 12 in the series. So he can help in so many areas, and just a huge boost to a team that needs a bit of a shot in arm after getting run out of the rink there in St. Louis.
Yeah, no doubt. And, listen, we spoke yesterday about the team kind of having just an optional skate. I mean, you come back from St. Louis, you travel, probably got in a relatively decent hour on Sunday after a noon game, and then back to work today. And, I certainly hope that this 3-day break, or almost a 3.5-day break between games 4 and 5, can help the Jets settle themselves. I can tell you from my perspective, Remis, I very much welcome the extra day in between these games. I think we all needed to just kind of let it out yesterday, express some frustration, and then move on to Game 5, which is going to be, in all likelihood, the odds will tell you that in a 2-2 series, you win Game 5, you're very likely to win the series. You lose Game 5, you're very likely to lose this series. So while it is not an elimination game for either team, it will have a massive effect on who ends up with the opportunity to play the winner of the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars in round number 2. And I kind of think that the team in some ways has somewhat of the pulse of the fan base, that, a timeout, a reset, and then get back to business, believing in yourself, as we've heard. And I went back after the show and I listened to Hellebuyck again yesterday, Remo, and I love the comments of people. There was a lot of great support for Hellebuyck on the Jets socials, certainly in our chat. He really hit the right tone. You don't want him to be a different guy than he is, and he always has been. You want him to have that confidence, that belief in himself, but also a little bit of accountability, which I think we heard. I need to be better. I will be better. And reminding everybody that is a 2-2 series, despite how miserable it probably felt for most people wearing Jet jersey it was to watch Games 3 and Game 4 and how it all fell down. So, we're going to hear from Gabe Vilardi a little bit later on. We'll hear more from Scott Arniel. But this is, as much as it is a challenge by a very, very good hockey team that has pressed them in multiple ways, this is also a great opportunity. And like I said yesterday, you want to stare down your demons. Sometimes you got to get up close and personal with them. And I think that's where the Jets are right now. And as I said, we're going to find out a lot about what this team is made of tomorrow night with the way that they respond to the St. Louis Blues in Game 5.
Yeah, you look at the last 2 playoffs where you win Game 1, then lose 4 straight. This one, you lose or win the first 2, and then you lose the next 2. Could they have 3 straight playoffs of getting bounced in the first round, losing? I don't want to say they're going to lose like the next 2 automatically, but I mean, that would be what a story that would be. But as you said, it would be a better story for the Jets, who know they're a good hockey team. They know what they're capable of, to come back and reverse it and win Game 5 and win either Game 6 or 7 to advance to the second round for the first time, since 2021, where they beat Edmonton. So I think they know that the way that they played in Games 3 and 4, that is not their game. They're more the team that you saw in Games 1 and 2 and the first period of Game 4. It's going to be up to them to show it, and I do have flashbacks to a very important game earlier this year in Dallas against a team that has given the Jets trouble in the past, where they showed up and played the best game of the year. That game in Dallas earlier this month. So,
well, you know what I'm comparing this one to, and this was a test earlier in the season, was the game against the Florida Panthers here in November.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you recall, the Jets were flying pretty high. They went into Florida and got thumped by the Lightning and then waxed by the Panthers. And at that point, everyone was saying, oh, the sky is falling, paper tigers, they've had a great start, this is the way the team really is. And then they came back and absolutely handed it to the Florida Panthers on home ice in their next game. That is what the Winnipeg Jets need to do in their return to home ice in game number 5 if they want to regain control of this series. Now, we've got some Adam Lowry and Scott Arniel that we want to get to for just a couple minutes before we welcome in Mike McKenna to the program. Just before we do that, though, if you've got a move planned coming up in the spring and summer, hit up our pals at Rolly's Transfer, family owned and operated for over 60 years in Manitoba, and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. All around the province on a daily basis, flexible times, flexible routes, and maybe the simplest way to get in touch with our friends at Rolly's is just go to their website at rollys.com, click on request an estimate in the top corner, put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and supplies, and then let her know when and where you're moving and what needs to go. And Rolly's will turn it around with a great quote for you and lock you in for the white glove treatment for all of your belongings that Rolly's is famous for. For your next move, make it Rolly's. Find out more, request an estimate today online at rollys.com. I hope Winnipeg will be full of big bleep-eating smiles on Thursday after the late-night game on Wednesday. And listen, if you're worried about your smile or maybe need to take care of it a little bit more, why don't you head down and see our pal Dr. Terry and his great staff at the St. Vital Dental Center at 167 St. Anne's. If you have been meaning to get to the dentist, but you haven't done it, or you realize that you and your family are maybe a little overdue, or just looking for a new spot for full care for family members from 6 months to 99 plus, St. Vital Dental Center has got it. Beautiful new facility with free parking right in the back of the building at 167 St. Anne's. State-of-the-art equipment and amazing staff and full dental services from cleanings, checkups, all the way to things like dental implants. Find out more on everything St. Vital Dental Center can do for you and your family and make an appointment online at stvitaldental.ca. Tomorrow, I hope to be cracking one of these delicious new Canadian Club ready-to-drink cocktails to celebrate a Jets win tomorrow night. Summer is here. Golf courses are open. Breezy Bend open on the weekend. And now Canadian Club has upped their game. Last year, I mean, you go to a Bomber game and you'd see everyone enjoying those delicious Canadian Club and ginger ale cocktails pre-mixed in cans. Well, guess what? The CC and ginger ale is back. Now, along with two other options, the Canadian Club Citrus Smash, which is crafted with Canadian whiskey and lemon flavors, and then the Half and Half, which is going to be a huge hit on the golf course this summer. The Canadian Club Half and Half with Canadian whiskey, iced tea, and lemonade flavors. Sort of like a spiked Arnold Palmer. You can pick up the 12-pack, 4 of each of the new flavors right now at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And each of the individual flavors will be available in 4 packs as well from Canada's iconic #1 Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club. Check it out your next time at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And hey, Jets need a spark tomorrow. You know who's been sparking Winnipeg, Manitoba, and WST listeners for years? It's Manitoba Battery, your local option for the best in batteries at the best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores. Stop wasting your time, in the parking lots of these massive chains and shop local, save money, and get the best customer service as well for whatever you need when it comes to batteries. Manitoba Battery's there for you. 2 locations, Logan Avenue, Dovercourt Drive. And maybe the best part of it all, we know you're busy. Donnie and the gang will deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Visit them in-store today or order online at manitobabattery.com. All right, let's get to a little bit of the coach. We'll get to 3 here. Listen, there's been a lot of talk about goaltending in this series. We heard from Connor Hrabchak yesterday and what he had to say. Scott Arniel was asked about goaltending in this series, and here's what he had to comment on that coming out of the 4th game.
I thought the first 2 games our goaltending was better than theirs. The second 2 games our goaltending was better than ours. Same, plain and simple. They think that, that's part of what a playoff series is all about. It's like our top players, our top offensive players, they got to be better than the opposition's top offensive players. Our grinders, our meat and potato guys, got to be better than their meat and potato guys. So this is a sort of, for me, a tale of 2 tapes. Game 1 and 2, I thought we owned those categories. Games 3 and 4, they owned those categories.
Pretty accurate from where I'm sitting, Reem. Scott Arniel playing, laying the cards out on the table. We won the 2 games when we were the better team, and guess what? They were the better team in games 3 and 4, and that's why this series is 2-2. It wasn't a direct public challenge, but it kind of was. Their top players need to be better. Their meat and potatoes, their grinder player needs to absolutely be better. And as we heard from Connor Hrabchak yesterday, he was the first one to admit, I need to be better. I will be better. The collective unit needs to step it up the way they did on home ice earlier in the series when we get going tomorrow.
Yeah, a lot of talk about goaltending. Some of those you could say Hrabchak could have played differently, and we'll have Mike McKenna on discussing that. But on a couple of those, it's either Jets losing board battles, not clearing the front, maybe screening their own goalie even. I think I agree. A collective, need to be better. And it is amazing how well they played in games 1 and 2 to have the performance they had in game 3 and 4 where the games were not close at all. But hey, we've seen series where, it varies from game to game. And I think as Arniel is going to state here, the main focus is, hey, they're tied 2-2. They have home ice. They're still in the driver's seat in this series until they're not. And I know we all have, some people may have, bad memories of the last couple of playoffs or, with Jets Blues game 5. I'm thinking of another game 5 they had here, but that's all in the past. There's no bearing on the future, and this team knows that.
No, exactly. And will fans get freaked out? Yeah. And listen, when you have that sort of recent playoff history that's fresh in everyone's mind and you lose 2 games the way they did, that is going to come up. But the hockey team cannot be thinking that way, and neither can the coach. And Arniel was asked about, if he had a message to fans who are kind of thinking, oh, man, here we go again.
This is the Western Conference. Take a look what's going on around the league. Everybody's tied 2-2. This is how we got here. I'm as a head coach, I'm not happy about how we got here, but we're here. We're just like everybody else in the West. We're all tied at 2. We played 82 games to get home ice advantage, and now we're in this position. So game 5, we have to be the best team on the ice, and I don't care what's happened in the past. One thing this group has done a fantastic job all year long is move on to the next game, be better. I thought last night, our first 35 minutes, we played a really good game. Our first period was really good. It was way better than what we did in Game 3. We played way faster. We put a lot more emphasis of getting out of our zone. We did a good job of zone time. Obviously, we made a mistake. We made a mistake at the end of the first, gave up a goal with 23 seconds left, and then the last 3 minutes of the second period. We were in a 2-1 game, and all of a sudden we make a couple of mistakes, and those are momentum swings that we have to be more cognizant of and make sure that we handle a little bit better.
All right, strong messaging from Scott Arniel on the focus on game number 5. How they got there in this series doesn't much matter. It's a best of 3. The Jets have home ice. Make the most of it tomorrow night. Let's hear from the captain. Adam Lowry was asked after the skate if, despite being 2-2, if game 5 feels like it's a must-win.
I think the way we're approaching this game is we want to get back to our style, our structure, our compete, our speed, and the results will take care of itself. Realistically, you want to win the series. You probably, you want to win this one, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, and in terms of thinking that you lose this one, the series is over. It's 2 good teams, going at it. We're approaching this as, a very important game for us. But, like I said, we don't want to, make this situation bigger than it is. It's, it's a swing game in this series. We want to put ourselves, in the best possible position to move on, and that starts Wednesday. That starts with a good start. I was playing on our toes. I was playing fast, and, getting to our forecheck.
All right, so there's Lowry on whether it's a game 5. Pretty diplomatic answer. But he also was asked about just the wide gap in the way the team performed at home and on the road in St. Louis in 3 and 4.
Yeah, you know what? I think matchups, home ice, you get the crowd into it. Obviously, they were a real desperate team coming into Game 3, and they jumped on us, and we were never able to recover. I think in Game 4, it's preaching a patience within our structure, but still playing on our toes. You don't have to force things. When you get down in the game, the chances will come, and I think when something doesn't go your way, or they score a goal, it's important for the guys going out the next shift to get things going back in the right direction. And sometimes that's a little easier at home when you have the crowd kind of getting you back into it, building you up, and things like that. So we're going to try and use that to our advantage, and then learn from those things in St. Louis, so that we're better prepared next time.
This segment is brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss is proudly Canadian-owned and operated, with history dating back more than 100 years. 3 locations in Winnipeg to serve you: Polo Park Shopping Center, State Vital Center, and Kildonan Place. Of course, Ben Moss is committed to customer satisfaction. So come on down and check out a large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your need. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, shine bright. All right, let's get down to the goaltending matchup in this series. And I don't know who could be better to join us right now than former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna, who is also in St. Louis and has been following this series. Mike, it is great to have you here on the program. How's things?
Hustler, man, it's great. Welcome to my office. It's as bare as can be. I'm in a liquor store, but I still pay attention to hockey an awful lot. So I tell you what, from a fan perspective, it's a 2-2 series, but we probably have some apoplectic people on both sides. St. Louis for the first 2 games, I can't imagine the temperature in Winnipeg right now, Hustler.
Yeah, essentially one of our chatters, waiters yesterday summed it up where the Blues are leading the series 2-2. It feels like the Blues have all the momentum, and yet you look and it is 2-2. But man, it really has been the tale of home ice so far. I mean, listen, before we kind of get into Hellebuck and Binnington, just your thoughts on what you saw here in Winnipeg with the Jets winning the first 2 games in a very close fashion, and then what changed in St. Louis in 3 and 4.
Well, I saw a frenzied crowd in every building, and I've played in Winnipeg. It's such a fun place to play, but it's also daunting when you're on the road. And I felt as though, from a Blues perspective, they were a little on their heels. They tiptoed into the series a little bit. I don't think St. Louis played poorly, but it wasn't their best, versus a Winnipeg team where you had Scheifele dominating 2 games. Kyle Connor was doing his thing down the wing. The defense for Winnipeg not just looked active, but they looked mean, right? When you had Stanley and Schenn together, I'm looking at this going that's a 47-foot wingspan of meanness. Now that dynamic's a little different, right? Without Stanley, and now the Blues have kind of figured out how to play without Dylan Holloway, who was a critical piece of their lineup. And I think that beyond anything like that, we've just seen that 5-on-5 has really been in the Blues' favor, versus when it gets into the penalties and mixed up and everything, Winnipeg's been better. So it's really been a mashup, man. And I don't think anybody can call this series right now, but momentum is definitely on the side of St. Louis.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the Jets needed to make their hay at home at 5-on-5. I mean, the one thing that's weird, the Jets had the number 1 power play in the entire league all season long. Well, it's the Blues that have been scoring on the PP, and that PK needs to it. You mentioned the Blues finding a way to make it work without Dylan Holloway. To me, that Jets second line without Nikolai Ehlers is just not even close to what it is with him. And but again, no one's feeling sorry for anybody right now. You got to find a way to get through it. And man, some contributions from line 2 and the Adam Lowry line, who's traditionally a real driver for them in the playoffs, I think absolutely crucial from a Jets side of things for Game 5.
It is. And one of the interpersonal battles that I love about this series is Lowry against Schenn. Talking about Braden Schenn for the Blues. I mean, you've got 2 hard-nosed guys that give it all for their team. I'm watching Lowry play, and I would love to have him on my team. Having played against him before, just knowing this is a guy that can make the play happen. But you touched on Ehlers being out. That's big. But Gabe Vilardi, who I expect to see in Game 5, knowing that he took warm. I think he'll be in Game 5. That's my guess. Vilardi is such a critical piece. And I remember even a couple of years ago when he was with LA saying that if this guy scores 20 goals, LA is going to make the playoffs. Like that was my threshold for it. And now he's finally found his place. He's a big driver on the power play for the Jets. So, you're never going to be 100% in the playoffs. You'll have players out of the lineup. Sometimes it's about adapting. And with St. Louis, they did that big stretch without Parayko. They had Holloway. Now they have Parayko, who's probably at 80% or so, but no Holloway. But they also factored in Jimmy Snuggerud straight out of Minnesota, who suddenly looks like a really good NHL player. So they were able to backfill that spot in a somewhat unexpected way where I'm not sure Winnipeg has been able to do the same.
Now, Mike, listen, your area of expertise, being a former NHL goaltender, will lean on you for what is happening in the pipes. A lot of hype about this one. I mean, the Four Nations rematch, Jordan Binnington, Connor Hrabchak. It goes without saying, Hrabchak has been on a historic run in the regular season, announces the finals for the Vezina, could potentially win the Hart Trophy. But these last two games have gone terribly for Connor, and it is somewhat reminiscent of the last couple years when things have really gone south for the Jets as a team in the playoffs. Just overall thoughts on the goaltending matchup as this series has gone from Winnipeg to St. Louis and back to the Peg.
Well, Binnington's been better. That's easy to say. But why is this happening? There's parts of Hrabchak's game that have always given me pause for concern the deeper you go into playoffs. And this guy's world class. And I think the world of Connor. I think he's an unbelievable goaltender. We all know that. But there is a level of explosiveness and compete that for his game isn't quite the same as even a Binnington or against maybe a Vasilevsky. There's a springiness to those guys, whereas Connor is a very cerebral goaltender. Reads the play. He's square. He's in position. He's able to utilize that big frame of his. And when you start to play against top-end teams that have had 2 weeks to pre-scout, because St. Louis and Winnipeg knew they were playing each other fairly. I think they knew they were playing each other pretty far in advance. You know the tendencies and weaknesses of goalies. So first off, Connor's not a great puck handler. He's adequate. Every NHL goaltender is an adequate puck handler. Jordan Binnington is a phenomenal puck handler. And so you're seeing Binnington ignite the breakout for the Blues. He makes a great first pass in there down the ice. Hrabchak's more likely to kind of shuffle it into place. He's also had mistakes. That's one. The other thing I see is that Hrabchak has pretty passive hands. He prefers to have his hands in front of him. I'm trying to show all the listeners out there his hands in front. What that does is take away a thing we call aerial angle. And if you can imagine the angle of the puck to the crossbar, that's aerial angle. That's what we're talking about. When your hands are forward, you take that away. Now, you look at other goalies that have very active hands. Their hands are a little further back. They can be more reactionary. If you ask me, when you get down to the best teams in the league and the top flight goaltenders in the most critical situations, you have to be active. I'm not sure Connor has that in him. I'm not sure. And this isn't to me a mental thing. I think this is more technical structural. That if his team in front of him can keep getting shots to the outside and give him time and not have backdoor chances or breaks, he's going to make all those saves. All of them. But I think he's getting beat because he's also nervous about a St. Louis team with a Robert Thomas who's notorious for sifting pucks through feet to the back door. And you could see where Connor Hrabchak is now sat back in his net. He's been deep. He's been off his angle, and he's exposed a lot of net. So that's the second factor. Third one for me is that he hasn't had a lot of backward flow or edge release on break chances. And the Robert Thomas goal in Game 4 was a perfect example where he was just flat foot. And I think that's been symptomatic of Connor's game for a long time, but he's been able to get away with it because he's a big enough guy and he doesn't face that many chances like that. So again, I'm nitpicking here. I want to be very clear about that. I'm nitpicking the tendencies of Hrabchak that exist, like every goalie in the league. I could do this with everyone from Shesterkin to Saros to Binnington and what they do, not as well as others. But I think the Blues have really feasted on those.
Mike McKenna's with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, talking Jets Blues and the goaltending matchup in the series. One thing that looked very different in games 3 and 4 was just the way the Jets looked in front of Connor Hrabchak. And listen, credit to the Blues for really pushing the pace. I think the Jets had, moments, certainly second period in game 3, although you could argue that the game was already lost at that point. But a real strong start until 22 seconds left. And then as the second period went on, it seemed to go more in the Blues fashion. And then the deflating second half of the second period when those 3 goals went in seemed to be, what determined game number 4. How impactful has it been what is happening in front of Connor Hrabchak with the club? Because, Mike, it really seems, and you look at the Jets' body work all season long, when they're playing to their structure and doing what it took to become a back-to-back Jennings winning team, we don't see a lot of that chaos in front of the net and some of the scrambly nature of plays that often have been leading to Blues goals in game 3 and 4.
Yeah, well, in the past, Winnipeg's done a good job not just keeping things to the outside, but clogging up the neutral zone. So they haven't allowed teams to put the puck into places to have extended zone time. St. Louis has been good about that, man. They've dumped the pucks to good places. They've been able to have good puck retrievals. They're a pretty tenacious forechecking team. It's why St. Louis was the best team in the NHL for the last month. Okay, this isn't a mid-pack team with the Blues. This is a team that's red hot here. They've won 14 straight games on home ice. That's wild, dude.
Nice run.
Yeah, so this isn't like some, middle pack team. But what I see that's problematic for Winnipeg is that I think that their gut reaction to what happened in the game 1 and 2 was, oh, God, we got to clear the front of the net so Connor can see it. They went overboard with it because game 1, the earlier games when Hrabchak was getting beat, he was deep in his net. He adjusted that for games 3 and 4. He was at the top of his crease. Watch the Jake Neighbors deflection goal. Watch the goal that went off Pion's, button in the net. Hrabchak wasn't deep on those. He's made an adjustment. But what's happening now is that they're so focused on that initial shot, boxing out or moving the player in front of the net. Tyler Tucker's goal was a great example the other night where Morrissey comes across the front of the net after Sundqvist has already cleared the front of the net. Morrissey comes and takes Hrabchak's eyes away from him, his own teammate. And this is a cardinal sin amongst players, is that you don't cross your goalie's sight line as the puck is coming. But Morrissey is so convinced that he has to take that player on the backside and get him out of the way. He's got to get there. And he takes his goalie's eyes out of the way. Takes his goalie's eyes out in the process. So now you're not just moving screen. You've got times where Neighbors' goal, there's 2 players side by side. There's a Blues player in front. There's a Winnipeg D right in front, side by side screen. You only want to have to look around one player as a goaltender. Connor Hrabchak can see around one goaltender. He's 6'6". It's no problem. When you go too wide, it's a problem. And whether that's the coaching staff, whether that's the players, whether it's players not listening, whether it's the coaching staff giving the wrong directive, I have no idea what the answer is here, but they got to stop that. Because right now you got a goalie who's all world who looks really bad, and he hasn't had a chance on half of these goals. Okay? I will clearly say that he had a chance on some of them. Braden Schen's goal, he's too passive, stick out. Robert Thomas, he's flat foot. That's on you. But those screen goals like that are avoidable, man, and that's half of them in the series. Okay, this isn't just a Connor Hrabchak thing, and this isn't a mental thing. This is a teamwork thing.
Hey, Mike, I want to ask you about the Schenn goal because for me, whatever, listen, Morrissey, I think, did impact it somewhat. Tanev didn't get any part of the puck, and Tucker scores, and that was a real killer. But the Schenn goal to me, and I talked about this yesterday on the show, the first time he was touched by a body in the Winnipeg end were his teammates hugging him. When he was coming in front of the net, I kind of took Hrabchak as sort of preventing him from taking it right into the blue paint and assuming that somebody else around there was going to do something to prevent Braden Schenn from continuing on. Do you see that as more of a goaltending mishap?
Well, I didn't like that he just had his stick resting out to block the lane. It's a passive play. It works, but you're not strong on your stick. And you could see that Schenn was able to pull it off a Hrabchak's stick.
Yeah.
The back check by Kyle Connor is the reason why. The lack of a back check by Kyle Connor, and combined with the lack of a back check on Thomas's goal, is the reason why he didn't play the last 9 minutes of the game. When you're one of the fastest skaters in the entire National Hockey League, you got to get back and protect the front of your net. End of story. And that guy's an incredible player. But if you're not going to play hard and go right to the front and take people's sticks, you're not helping your team. And I agree with you. You can't give away the front of your net. You can't give away middle ice. That's been another problem for Winnipeg.
I mean, the first two games of the series, it seemed like the Jets sort of controlled the area in front of the net, and it was a complete 180 in St. Louis. And, you know, Monty spoke about that as well as a goal for them, and I think they were very successful in doing that coming back home. Well, it is now 2-2. We're back here in Winnipeg for the game tomorrow night, Mike. Put yourself in maybe Wade Flaherty's shoes right now as the goaltending coach for Connor Hrabchak. What is the focus going into Game 5, and what will you be looking for when the puck drops on Friday night to see where Hrabchak is at? And maybe the Jets in front of them it is a team game, and those 5 players have something to do with it as well.
You never know what'll happen. I think the biggest thing for Wade and for Connor to work through is just first save first. And I actually believe he did a better job of that in games 3 and 4. Like I said, he wasn't shrinking back as often as he was in the first couple of games. So I thought he made a good adjustment. I think he does have to be conscious, though, that when these players are attacking, you've got to set your angle and have a little flow and accept that shot. I think you've got to make sure that you do stay at the top of your paint for these long shots and deflections and try to be good about reading it. But more than anything, I think they need to sit down with the defense and have a big discussion about this in what we expect out of one another. I'm the goalie. I'll make the first save. I'm the goalie. I'll put the rebound in a place that's not going to be dangerous to us. Trust me, please. Please don't run in front of me. Please don't take my eyes away. Take sticks. Get in there for the rebounds. If they're there, I will make those saves. So I'm not as concerned about Hrabchak. This whole mental thing, he left the bench. It's what he does, man. Like that's him. He's one of the most resilient people I've played against. You know, again, he's all world. It's a team thing. They need more from the D. They do need more from Connor. He's got to find a next level of intensity. Like if I'm Flaherty, here's the only thing I would do other than talk to the D. I would show him video of Tim Thomas winning the Stanley Cup that season and say, you're not going to play like that, but that's the intensity that we want to see out of you. You don't have to check people. You don't have to chirp anybody, but just that's the level we need. Got to be there. Let's get there. We can do this.
Hey, Mike, just on the way out, we all focus on our guy here, and, it does come in the last couple of games, at least, in stark contrast to, a historic season for Connor Hrabchak. But I'm looking at Andrei Vasilevsky, a fellow Vezina Trophy finalist, his last 3 playoffs. Now, again, he has won a cup, but 875, 897, 884. Just from a goaltending perspective, how much more intense and difficult is it to put up those incredible performances when the stakes in the competition are raised as they are in the Stanley Cup tournament?
It's hard, and it's also tough to do it over a time frame. And, Sergei Bobrovsky is a great example of somebody who people thought couldn't win. We don't believe that he can't win. Get rid of him. And look what happened last year. I mean, there's a real maturation process to being able to win in the postseason. I went through it. Like Hustler, I got yanked 2 straight games in the American League playoffs one year. We were out. Next season, I got yanked the first 2 games, and we lost. Did I play great? That didn't feel like I played terrible, but I got yanked 4 straight games, okay? It took me until the next season to have a great playoff where I just said, you know what? Just stop caring. I talked to Ty Conklin, former NHL goalie, and Ty Conklin said, Mike, you got to stop caring so much. You got to go out there and not give up. And it just totally loosened me up. Like I stopped caring and I played better. It sounds so antithetical, but it let me play free. It let me be unencumbered. You see that in Binnington. He's so free right now. Connor doesn't look free. Connor looks controlled by the situation, whereas Binnington's thriving in it. Go out there and don't care. It sounds terrible, but I'm telling you, that's what it took for me to cross that bridge. And I have no doubt in my mind, I mean this wholeheartedly, that all it's going to take is one thing to click for Connor Hrabchak, whether it's this year or even if this year finishes poorly, maybe it's next year. I still believe 100% this is a guy that can win a Stanley Cup. It's got to come together. And you see it with Vasilevsky. He's won it. There's nothing wrong with him, but his numbers don't show it. He can still make the big save at the big time.
It's just it's such an intriguing matchup between the teams, but especially two of the top goalies in the game and two of the most interesting goaltending minds, I think, between the ears of both of these two, which are very different. Mike, thanks so much for doing this and taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the series, and all the best with everything you've got going down in St. Louis. I
appreciate it, Hustler. Anytime, man. If I can fit it into the schedule, I miss talking hockey, and goalie's my passion. So I'm anxious to see how this series ends up.
Thanks so much. Have a great one and enjoy Game 5. Yeah, great catching up with Mike McKenna. Always appreciate his insights into goaltending, the NHL, and perfect timing to do it with him settled down in St. Louis right now. Hey, I want to thank our great WST friend, Sean from Let's Do It Travel, for jumping on board with WST. The Let's Do It Travel, give them a follow on Instagram at Let's Do It Travel WPG, and check out them online at letsdoittravel.com. We've all done it. We've gone on to Expedia or whatever, and we've looked at things like, oh, that sounds like a pretty good deal, and bought it. And then, unfortunately, in many cases, realized that, with maybe a little bit more time spent in making decision, or better yet, a professional to help us make that decision, we might be able to stretch that travel dollar further and make the most of the precious time we have away from the office on vacation. If you are planning that amazing getaway for an all-inclusive next summer, or next winter, I should say, or maybe the biggest decision of your life, fellas and women, if you're planning that destination wedding, using a travel agent can be a huge benefit by both making the best choices and getting you set up with as little hassle and questions as possible, and again, getting you the best deals out there. Sean at Let's Do It Travel can help WSTers do exactly that. And here's the kicker. Let's Do It Travel is waiving their booking fees for WST listeners. Just let Sean know we sent you. And again, hit him up on Instagram at Let's Do It Travel WPG, or online at letsdoittravel.com. You've got a buddy in the travel business with Let's Do It Travel. Get in touch today and stretch that travel dollar further on your next excursion. I have to thank Princess Auto for their continued support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. It's fun. We're going to be talking to John Hodge about CFL draft coming up, which, despite the stress of the Stanley Cup playoffs, has me excited for the upcoming Blue Bombers season. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors of WST, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the home of the blue and gold Princess Auto Stadium, and of course, the Whiteout Mania campaign supporting the Winnipeg Jets right now in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Get on down to Princess Auto for the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is waiting for you at Princess Auto. While you're there, pick up a free Whiteout Mania sign at Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or Princess Auto in Brandon. And of course, you can all shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Counting down the days right now to getting out to Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge this summer. I cannot wait. It is always the highlight of my summer. And listen, I know there's a lot of people that are maybe making some different travel plans this year because of everything that's going on around us. If you're thinking about keeping it Canadian, and better yet, keeping it in the province of Manitoba, we've got a world-class fly-in fishing lodge where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, which not only makes it perfect for friends and family trips, but corporate outings as well. Head on over to aikenslake.com to find out all about the 2025 fishing season options, and check out what they've got going on all their social channels at Aikens Lake as well. And hopefully we'll see you up at Aikens Lake sometime this summer. And hey, fellas, if you need to up your menswear game right now, it's getting nice outside. We got wedding season coming up. I know there's a lot of people graduating, or maybe you just want a new look as we get into the new season. You know where to go. F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown. The best in men's clothing, including custom suits starting at $400. Chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, the best in menswear accessories, and of course, 2 great promos on right now. If you have a grad in the family with graduation just around the corner, take the young man down to F Apparel, pick up a suit, and get a free shirt and tie for every 2025 grad. And of course, with the weddings just around the corner, F's the #1 spot for wedding suits in town. They've got a great deal for wedding parties. So fellas, if you need to get a suit for the big day that preferably you can wear long beyond the big day, F's got you covered with a great discount for wedding parties. Find out more in-store today at 190 Smith Street downtown, or check them out online for all their promos and make an appointment to come in for a fitting at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right. Jeff Hamilton's going to join us in a few minutes. We will hear a little bit from Gabe Vilardi and Coach Arniel as we continue. We've got a CFL draft preview in the second hour of the show with John Hodge for tonight. But right now, let's head back to the Hockey for All Center. Connor Hrabchak and Lyss Houde standing by with the WST practice report for the Winnipeg Jets.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Winnipeg Sports Talk Practice Report. My name is Connor Hrabchak. She's Lyss Houde. And we just heard from Gabriel Vilardi, Dylan DeMello, Kyle Connor, and Scott Arniel here at the Hockey for All Center. And I think the biggest piece of news is that Gabriel Vilardi will be back in the lineup for Game 5. And Lyss, where is he going to slot into the lineup?
Yeah, so Gabe Vilardi was taking line rushes with his regular line mates in Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, as well as back in his regular spot down low on the first power play unit. So we expect to see him, based on Scott Arniel's comments, as well as what we saw in the line rushes, to be taking his full place. There were some questions about maybe some load management ahead of practice today, but it looks like it's going to be full speed ahead for Gabe Vilardi for Game 5 tomorrow.
And one thing that we were not expecting today, but we did see, was Nikolai Ehlers on the ice. And Scott Arniel was asked if this was the first time he was on the ice, and it was not. Apparently, Nikolai Ehlers had skated a few times when the team was in St. Louis, and now he's on the ice, and Scott Arniel said that he will be in a yellow non-contact jersey tomorrow at the Winnipeg Jets morning skate. So he's not going to be in the lineup for Game 5, probably not Game 6. I mean, we just went through this with Gabe Vilardi. He went in the yellow non-contact jersey and then was out for a little bit longer before returning to the lineup tomorrow night at Wednesday at Canada Life Center. But ultimately a good sign. Nikolai Ehlers back on the ice.
It's very exciting, and it's really positive prognosis considering there wasn't a lot of information disclosed about the injury, and a lot of people were very concerned considering that the nature of the injury and the aggravation of the injury in the game against the Chicago Blackhawks didn't look at the surface level super severe, super dire. So when folks didn't know what was going on, there was a lot of worry around what Nikolai Ehlers' status would be for the playoffs. So it's really exciting to see that he was not just skating today, but will be in a yellow non-contact, participating in practice, or morning skate, tomorrow morning at Canada Life.
And one thing that he's not back in the lineup yet, so Cole Perfetti is remaining on that top power play unit that Gabriel Vilardi will now join, and that's something that the Winnipeg Jets need to improve on in this list series. The power play is 2 for 12, 16% right now through the first 4 games, and it was the #1 power play in the league during the season. Gabriel Vilardi was on that top power play unit. They were snapping it around in practice today. What did both Kyle Connor and Scott Arniel say as to the options that Gabriel Vilardi brings to that top unit?
Well, the word threat was used several times over the course of today's media availability. And listen, we've all watched the Winnipeg Jets power play. We definitely understand where that appeal comes from with the different threats that are available. Kyle Connor was playing on the opposite flank for a few of the games early in the series against St. Louis. And now he's back on his regular side on the right-hand circle there. So with him back in his office, as well as Gabe Vilardi back down low, adding Cole Perfetti to the slot and Mark Scheifele on his own half wall presents a ton of opportunities and threats down low. And if the puck can continue to be mobile and they can get that mobility on that power play that we know the team is always looking for, there's definitely a positive sign for that power play number that's sitting at a 16% right now to definitely improve over the course of the next couple games.
For sure. And one thing that another aspect that Gabriel Vilardi brings without necessarily bringing, he's going to be on that top line, but Scott Arniel mentioned the balancing out of the lines list. What are the rest of the forward lines going to look like, especially that Lowry line that had seen some, different wingers on Adam Lowry's wing, but a very familiar look on the Lowry line?
Yeah, the lines that we definitely spoke the most about in media and looking at during the practice today is that first line that we already spoke about with Gabe Vilardi's return, as well as the reunion of that third line that's played a good chunk of the year together, that being Nino Niederreiter with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. So that's a line that is looking to see a little bit of reignited offense and perhaps some stronger defense to shut down some of the lines that have been so positive for St. Louis over the course of these last couple games in particular. So that's going to put Alex Iafallo on that second line with Cole Perfetti and Vlad Nemestikov. So that's a line that comparatively to that first and third line that we mentioned, we haven't seen quite as much of this year, but there's definitely some area for that to contribute in a secondary scoring role, considering how Alex Iafallo has able to been such a nice complementary piece for Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele this year.
Yeah, and I think Alex Iafallo going on that second line is a better fit than Nino Niederreiter, and Nino Niederreiter going to the third line is a better fit for his style of game as well. I think this is a really good assessment by Scott Arniel, as he said, to balance out his lines. It gives them a different look, and especially on that second line that's been generating chances, but not necessarily finishing them in this series. Cole Perfetti has been one of the most snake-bitten Jets. He's hitting a few posts. As the Kyle Connor goal, he hit the post, and then Kyle Connor had a wide-open net to shoot at, but that third line getting back to a familiar look, I think is a really big boost for that Winnipeg Jets group. Lyss, is there anything else that we missed today from practice that you can remember from Dylan DeMello, Gabriel Vilardi, Kyle Connor, Scott Arniel?
Yeah, I think everyone's really excited. The vibes are pretty good going into tomorrow. Obviously, a lot of folks in the Jets fan circles are feeling a little bit nervous, but the group seems really put together and composed. Lots of really great responses from the guys in media today. Lots of intensity in the small area games and the line rushes that we saw. Some great special teams practice, not just for the power play, but also for the penalty kill, which is an area that Connor and myself and many others have addressed as something that needs to improve over the course of the next 2 or more games. So I think, we're feeling really good about going into tomorrow, the 8:30 p.m. start at Canada Life Center for Game 5. It's going to be a big one, and it sounds like everyone's really excited and raring to go to show what they can do.
Everyone's got all night and all day tomorrow to practice their Macarena for when Gabriel Vilardi scores on the power play and the whiteouts going nuts. Game 5's tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. puck drop down at Canada Life Center. This has been the Winnipeg Sports Talk Practice Report.
Thank you very much, Connor and Lyss. That was awesome to get a practice report coming out of honestly, one of the most viewed practices I think the Winnipeg Jets have had all season long. First, get Nikolai Ehlers out there beforehand, and then obviously having Gabriel Vilardi in the mix. If we can take anything from practice today, I think it's likely that we'll see Stan and Shen back together as the third pairing for tomorrow's game, and really a lineup that mirrors game 1 and 2 with the exception of Gabriel Vilardi going in, which is obviously going to have a trickle down and hopefully shake up these second lines, which brings us to the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. In game 5, who needs to step up the most for the Winnipeg Jets? Listen, I think Hellebuyck would be the obvious answer to, first and foremost, Connor Hellebuyck steps up and has a lights-out game, Jets probably win. So I guess that is an easy answer. But if you want to dive in a little bit more, is it Mark Scheifele fighting through the abuse that he's getting right now from the St. Louis Blues and making an impact offensively? Is it Gabe Vilardi and his return to the lineup and what he can do? Is it Josh Morrissey and the guys on the blue line? Is it the secondary scorers that have not been scoring through this series right now? We've got a poll out right now that Remis has just thrown out. Who needs to step up the most in game number 5? Hellebuyck, Morrissey, Lowry, secondary scorers, all up right now. So get your votes in right now and let us know in the chat what you think for the Why Not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Lots of love for the on-location segment down at practice today. Yeah, Connor and Lyss did a great job, as always. And then, comment, the WST Sunday crew significantly cheered me up with injury good news. But let's get to fan feedback. Brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market with no added fees. What you see is what you pay when you're looking on Fans First, and certainly from a selling perspective, best place to sell, as I've heard from so many season ticket holders, including myself when need be, know exactly what you're going to be getting when you list them at your set price, and you'll get that money e-transferred to you the next morning, the day after the game. Looking at the chat, Jay Miller says Jomo is the answer. Josh Morrissey. I think the entire defensive core needs to be better than it was in the last couple of games. And Morrissey certainly has been taking his fair share of abuse, much like Mark Scheifele has been, and the ability to work through that and make a positive difference at both ends of the ice is the sort of pressure that I think Josh Morrissey welcomes. I think that he'll certainly be right there. Jude, all of the above wasn't an option. I'm with you on that. I think you can basically make a case for just about everybody. And listen, Connor are both in the chat. Great to see you both. Great stuff as always from the rest of the WST team. I see some Adam Lowry there. Jake Slobodian. Lowry got to bring playoff Lowry and lead with his physicality. And listen, the funny thing that Adam Lowry's in there as the captain, I think it's fair. Adam Lowry is also a guy that is a big part of that secondary scoring, or needs to be come playoff time. And obviously he had the empty netter in game number 1. But other than that, it's been quiet. And listen, with Gabe Vilardi coming into the lineup, we'll see where Alex Iafallo shifts in, what that might mean for the Lowry line, potentially getting Nino Niederreiter back. So there are options right now. Hopefully it helps the Jets do what they need to do in game number 5. Keep your feedback coming in the chat and on the poll. Right now, not surprisingly, Connor Hrabchak, number 1 in the poll at 54%. Fan feedback is brought to you by Fans First. Check out the site today at fansfirst.ca. By fans, for fans, no fees. All right, it is about that time. It is hammer time. Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press joins us now. I know his mic is turned on. I know that he's locked and loaded and ready to go. Big day in the CFL today, which we'll get to, but certainly going to start off with hockey. As we bring Hammer in, do want to thank Prairie Toyota dealers for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk during the playoffs. Your Prairie Toyota dealers also want to remind you to get in and go with the Toyota Tundra. The Tundra has the quality that means it has the strength to take on any challenge, off-road or hauling a heavy load, backed by the peace of mind knowing it's a Toyota. Take the road less traveled in comfort, room for teammates, friends, and gear. And can we talk about just how good this truck looks? Anywhere it goes, the Toyota Tundra will be turning heads. From $154 weekly for 60 months at 5.19% APR with $66.99 down. Hybrid is available. Visit shoptoyota.ca today for more on the beautiful Toyota Tundra. Jeff Hamilton in now from the Winnipeg Free Press. Hammer, what's good, buddy? How are you?
It's not bad, man. Even better being on the show. Exciting times here. How's what's the temperature like right now?
Well, I will tell you, my personal temperature was a full overheat on Sunday afternoon. It wasn't as much an overheat. I mean, that was a deflating, dispiriting, and not necessarily the entire game, but it was that 8 minutes in the second period, basically the second half of the second period, that, I mean, to use Mark Scheifele's words, the game just unraveled on them. And, I mean, listen, we've seen this team play at a really high level all year long. They were the number 1 team in the league. If that had happened throughout the regular season, we've seen the team bounce back in very, very impressive fashion. But to get whooped the way they did those 2 games, Jeff, I mean, naturally brought people face to face with the ghosts of the previous 2 playoffs. And, I keep going back to Wader's comment in the chat yesterday. The St. Louis Blues are leading the series 2-2. It felt that way at the end of Game 4, and it took it took a miserable rest of Sunday, a sleep, get it out yesterday on the show, and now we listen to Connor Hrabchak and some of the other players. This team should have confidence in what they built all season long. They need to put on a brave face, and they need to go out and be their best. So I assure you that by the time the puck drops tomorrow, I, like everyone else in that building, will be ready to go and be behind the team. But, I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it's been a bit of a shock to the system watching Game 3 and 4, especially the way the season's gone and the way they started out playing at home.
Yeah, I think it's that last part, Huss. Last 2 parts, the way they've been playing at home and the season start, or whatever the season start, that's irrelevant to this point. But certainly, this is a team that's been doing it all year, and I feel like I feel weirdly alone in my feeling that this isn't that big a deal. Like it was a tough 2 games. The Jets punched them. I mean, I know it was closer in the two games in Winnipeg versus those 2 in Missouri, but whether you win 2-1 or 10-1, it counts the same. I do think I do understand the dread, that fear of ghosts from previous playoffs, and how that would seep in. But I don't know. I think the Jets, believe it or not, are in a series. They were going to be in a series the whole time. They weren't going to win 16 games. They weren't going to sweep the Blues. And so I understand those feelings, but this is where you get that metal, man. This is where you get those scars. You develop those playoff scars, is going through these kind of situations in the playoffs. And this is the scary thing, Huss, is if the Jets do plan to go on a long ride here in the playoffs, and they're certainly equipped to do so, they're going to go through other issues, other obstacles, other questions of their series. That's the beauty of the NHL playoffs. It's unpredictable. And the best part about it doesn't matter what happened the last 2 games. Doesn't matter what happened the last 4 games. Doesn't matter what happened last game. What matters is what happens the next game, and that's got to be the focus, and that is the focus for the Jets. I think it's going to be a nervous building. I understand that, but at the end of the day, the Jets get to come back home in front of their faithful, play in front of their fans, and give it to the visitors, and that home ice advantage, as has been talked about, in the locker room and outside, is massive. We've seen that already in this playoffs, and with the I'll take those words from Connor Hrabchak. It's a best-of-3 series, and the Jets have home ice advantage. That's a pretty good place to be, despite starting the series 2-0 and now being evened up at 2-2. You'd think that they were already out of it.
Yeah, no. Listen, we know where the term fan comes, and calm, rational thinking, especially at the biggest time of the year, is probably not something that is commonplace with a lot of fans, but there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of passion. You've invested this entire year, and it would be an absolute shame if the team, after the start that they had, went into the roadblock for more than 2 games that they just got in St. Louis. And listen, it's impossible to put the history out until you sort of, like I've been saying the last 2 days, you sort of stare those ghosts down, you face those demons.
Slay that dragon, whatever cliche you want to use.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I really think that going into this game tomorrow night, they have the opportunity to do exactly that. I mean, it is 2-2. This will not decide the series, but I don't know I think it's about 80% for teams that win Game 5 in series that are 2-2 that end up going on to win. And the one thing that I am leaning on, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, but for people that missed it, I'm here for the full reverse series of 2019. If people recall, the Jets lost the first 2 games at home. Everyone said that they were dead. They went back and won Game 3 and 4 in St. Louis. They were back. And then ended up, thanks to a Jacob Trouba brain fart and Jaden Schwartz picking a puck out of the air and scoring in the final minute, losing Game 5, and then Game 6 was a disaster, which has sort of led to, obviously, the weird COVID years, but then the last 2 years that I think are still fresh in people's minds. What was worrisome was maybe the way that they lost. But again, I mean, we kind of did that yesterday. To your point, it's about what they can do better and what they have to do better and what they have to get back to doing in Game 5 that I think will define them in this series. And as I said, if you want to dwell on what happened against Vegas and Colorado, that's your right. But we have more recent history of the team having a stinker or 2 and coming back with sustained, extended performances of very, very good hockey. And that's what this team needs to lean on going into tomorrow night.
Yeah, and I'm gonna leap off the same spot I think I left off the last one with being at home. This is obviously a significant advantage that goes beyond just having thousands of fans cheering you on every shift and making it a little bit more difficult for the opposing team. It's that last shift change, matching lines, because it is very evident that the St. Louis Blues are sticking Braden Schen's line on that top line of the Winnipeg Jets, and it doesn't even look like that group knows there's a puck on the ice. It is It is strictly a physical play, physical body on that top line of the Jets the last couple of games, particularly the last game. And so I think this is a big opportunity, obviously, for Scott Arniel to do his line matching, get that lineup out against weaker competition, take advantage of the advantage having last change and executing that's going to be a big significant play in these next few games here, particularly those that are in Winnipeg for the Jets. The other thing, Huss, I use that as a kind of a jump off point too, is look, I've loved what the middle, like what the fourth line has done as far as contributions offensively to a certain degree, which has helped obviously with the top line kind of struggling over the last little bit. But I'd like to see the bottom line be more of an energy line. I'd like them to be more physical. I'd like the bottom six to be more physical. I heard some people talking about, an Adam Lowry and what he needs to do more of. He needs to be more physical. That line needs to be more physical. The bottom half needs to be more difficult to play against. And while it's been nice to see some, puck possession, and I'm not against that, obviously, I think that more to their identity of being tough and hard to play on is going to bode well for them. I feel a little bit too much finesse with the bottom line. I'm not even picking on them because I think the top line needs to be better. Of course, the elephant in the room, Huss, and I'm sure you've talked about it ad nauseum yesterday, and I'm sure today, is the play of Connor Hrabchak, right? We all know that there's better Connor Hrabchak out there, and there will need to be better Connor Hrabchak. So I think there's lots of things that, you can look at these two games, you can look at how they've played out, the amount of goals that the Blues have scored, and try to paint this doomsday situation. That's easy. But if you look at some of the things that are happening, if you look closer at them, if you look at, the shift back to Winnipeg, all those things, there's reasons to see Winnipeg in a very different light. And I think we saw that through the first two games. I think we're going to see that through the next three, particularly if it goes to 7 here in Winnipeg. But those are the things that we talked about heading into the playoffs, that who are the Jets best suited to play against. Those conversations are crap once the playoffs starts, because it doesn't matter where you finished, and there are going to be ghosts to slay. The beauty is the Jets have a real opportunity in front of them. They have the talent on their team, and they're getting some talent back, whether that be Gabriel Vilardi here coming up. Of course, Nikolai Ehlers skating is a positive sign. So good news is coming, but this team's still very much, a very much talented team that has played well within their structure. And I find it somewhat humorous that even amongst my friend group, that I'm the one that seems to be defending these guys as far as, system play and just sticking to it, right? Because even lots of people just want them to do things differently, and they're going to have to adjust. They can't just do the same thing. But the foundation of this team's game, the hard on the puck, the plugging up the middle, those values that they've expressed all season long. When you hear players talking about not changing things, it's not adapting to what the Blues are doing in certain situations of the game. It's not shifting from the foundations of the style in which they want to play. So it's the minor details, the chess match, if you will, of games that is the responsibility of the coach to identify and to change and to shift and whatever. But the core values of your system and the way in which you play need to be maintained. And I think coming back home is going to be a good reminder for Winnipeg of just that.
Hammer, let's get to Hrabchak. I mean, the numbers aren't pretty. Funny enough, the numbers aren't pretty for any of the 3 Vezina finalists right now. I mean, Kemper, Vasilevsky, all under 900 right now. But specifically with Helly, he's such an interesting cat. We usually don't hear from him very much, certainly through a series or after a loss. And I think a lot of fans kind of needed to hear what he had to say yesterday. Now, he will always put on a brave face. He has an unwaverable, a level of confidence that is probably unmatched. But for him to express confidence in himself and the team, and at the same time say, I need to be better, I will be better, I think struck the right tone. Again, all of that's in front of a microphone. What really is going to happen, what really is going to be important, is what happens when you get out there and tend the net tomorrow night against the St. Louis Blues. But just what do you make of the goaltending battle of this series? How things went in the first 2 here, and how he recovers and really washes away or flushes, if you will, probably a more appropriate term, the last 2 games by he and his team going into a game that's going to be so decisive likely in this series.
I don't want to make light of it, but I find it hilarious how like there's people, and I heard that sentiment throughout, need Connor Hrabchak to say he's going to be better, right? Like people need him to go out in the microphone and say, I need to be better.
Well, just
and
in
I'm
the
going
past,
to be
he's
better,
always
right?
said, oh, I like my game. And it was like there was almost a level of delusion.
For sure. But that was in a series where he didn't talk throughout the series, right? Mm-hmm. That was at the end of it. I feel like it was very interesting, Huss. And I think it begs the question, had he not been announced as one of the finalists for the Vezina Trophy, is he talking? Is he even out there talking about it? Because that's why he was made available, right? I mean, I'm one of those people who I want every player to talk after every situation. I can get it as a goalie, how, it's a lot of it's between the ears, and you'll talk when you talk and whatever. And, we don't get those decisions anymore. We don't fight for them at least anymore. But, I thought it was interesting to hear him talk about it. I mean, I wasn't surprised, as you mentioned. I wasn't surprised at all to hear how he felt about his game. Like, I don't think this guy was going home after games, nor do I think you want a goalie going home after games and like getting into the fetal position in his bed, like he's all overwhelmed with what's happening. This is the best goalie in the world, right? He needs to trust his instincts. He needs to believe in his instincts. Now, saying all that, Huss, now I'm obviously in the minority here, probably the vast minority. I certainly woke up the next day thinking there's no way that the Winnipeg Jets would ever do a goalie change. And I wonder what your show is. I didn't catch your show yesterday, what the conversation about that was, if it was a non-starter. But I wonder how many other teams would go to Eric Comrie in this situation.
I would guess 0.
0?
And I think it's a preposterous thought at 2-2 coming home after 2 wins at home.
Because the reason why I find myself, and I'm not saying that I would be doing that, and I can already hear people being like, that's why you're not an NHL coach. There's more reasons than that I'm not an NHL coach. But I will say this. I think it's an interesting conversation, because if you do it now, if you don't do it now, rather, you can't do it. So to me, that was the interesting part about it. Now, I just to be clear, I didn't think in what I know about this organization, what I know about Connor Hrabchak, what I know about coaching staff, if I would bet everything I own on the fact that he would not start. So I wasn't like I was coming for that, but I do think it's an interesting conversation, and I disagree with you. I don't think there are 31 other coaches out there that would do it. I think there is someone who would have the guts to do it. And when I say that, I don't mean it as like, I guess it would be a sign of panic, perhaps, right? Your Vezina winning goalie who's now removed and whatever. But I don't know what happens if they lose this game and they lose the next game after. Then would you have done it? Like, again, hindsight's always 20/20. The reason I even bring it up, I think it's a fascinating conversation, and I don't necessarily think it would turn out badly.
I think it's a non-starter. I think just the effect of making that decision would have some pretty big-time negative ramifications.
In what respect, though? So if you say that, like you're saying that, like Connor Hrabchak would be like livid.
I think that losing confidence in your number one most important player after 2 games where the team wasn't very good in front of you would be crazy. Would be
kind of is 4 games though, isn't it? Or no, I guess it's 3 games.
Well, I think it would send a terrible message to the rest of the team. And here, at the end of the day, Jeff, and I will grant you, like, I mean, listen, everyone can have their own opinion.
Yeah.
You will never convince me that regardless of the situation, with all due respect to Eric Comrie, who we love and had a really good season, that the Winnipeg Jets have a better chance of winning a hockey game with somebody in net other than Connor Hrabchak. So, I mean, it's 2-2. As much as it did feel like the sky was falling on Sunday afternoon, there's 3 days off. You get a chance to reset, go out, put your best foot forward, play the way that you have in the past, that you did at the start of this series, that you can, and challenge the guy that's going to win another Vezina trophy to go out there and be the difference and be better than Jordan Binnington, and hope that he and his teammates rise to the occasion. But...
Yeah. That's what they're doing, right? I mean,
I don't have a lot of time for the thought that, again, love Eric Comrie, thought he did a great job as the backup this year when called upon. this is Connor Hrabchak's team. I mean, it would be akin to shutting down, name the most important player on any other team. Like, Jared Bednar's not sitting.
It'd be like sitting Sidney Crosby in a Penguins playoff run.
Yeah, Nate McKinnon, it's 2-2. You had a terrible game. You were -4 in the last game and made a couple bad giveaways. You know what, Nate? Take it easy. Charlie Coyle's playing number 1 center. I know, it's not happening.
I mean, that is, to me, a bit apples. I get what you're saying. And here's the thing. It's not a disrespect thing to Connor Hrabchak, and it wouldn't be done with the belief that Connor Hrabchak wouldn't be getting back into the crease. It would be identifying something within your group and needing to get something better out of your guys. So it wouldn't necessarily be just an indictment against Connor Hrabchak. It would be, maybe a firecracker for the rest of the team, whatever. I mean, obviously, I understand how ridiculous it sounds. I'm just saying that they could be an interesting conversation. And again, I'm not making the argument that more people than not would do that.
Hey,
I would just be curious if anyone would.
Trust me, I don't have a lot of time for the conversation, but you are correct in stating that conversation has been had, even by some people in the media, which, again, blows my mind.
Oh, that hearing the media, honestly, hearing the U.S. broadcasters talk about hockey sometimes, you kind of get your back up a little bit. And I'm not trying to be anti-American or anything like that, but there's some who clearly don't understand the dynamics of the team that they're calling. And so, this idea that, you would immediately talk, that's what it was when I was watching the ESPN feed. It was talking immediately about who would start next game. And I mean, again, even though I'm bringing this conversation up 2 days later, I never for a second imagined that the Jets would be contemplating that whatsoever. And I'm not surprised, and it's funny too, right? It's funny how we kind of nitpick at certain things and I'm not just, and when I say we, I'm talking about, reporters, I'm talking about fans. It's like, we nitpick at certain aspects of the game and why we want a player to say this, why wouldn't you do that? What are the different, when should they have pulled Connor Hrabchak? Should they have pulled Connor Hrabchak? It's all these little decisions that make up. My only point was that if you were to put Eric Comrie in, I think it'd be a bit of a wake up call to the rest of the team. And then if you lost that, and it comes with a short leash. Like if Eric Comrie's getting, if he's getting picked on in that net and he's, allowing 2 goals in the first period, you kind of end the experiment right there. But if you don't, you ride it, and then you put Connor Hrabchak back in the net. Give him a chance to kind of.
There will be no experiment, and I'll even go so far as to say, and I don't want to think about this, the Jets could get smoked 7-8-1 tomorrow. Hrabchak starting game 6. That's just the way that it is. So.
For sure, absolutely. You wouldn't put. No one's asking to put your series fate on Eric Comrie. That's what you'd be doing with Game 6.
But listen, it's a huge test for Hrabchak and the team. And listen, I think these days, in between games, not only a chance to reset, but also a chance to, whether they like it or not, stare down their playoff history. What they didn't do very well in games 3 and 4, and come out with a sense of commitment to playing the winning style of hockey that made them the number 1 team in the league and showing what they're capable of. And I certainly hope we see that tomorrow. Just quickly, Vilardi's back, and things were going so well for that top line. We speculated that maybe he doesn't go into that spot right away. Obviously, with what happened in St. Louis, I think that's changed the equation a little bit. He's going to be there with Connor and Scheifele, which hopefully gives a real offensive boost to the top line. Obviously, the power play, which goes without saying. What do you think of Iafallo moving to line 2 with Nemestikov and Perfetti and getting Niederreiter back with Lowry and Appleton? I mean, the one thing that this team has really been missing so far in this series has been any offense from line 2 and line 3. And it's pretty tough to imagine beating the St. Louis Blues if that doesn't change quickly.
Yeah, or relying too much on your top line or your special teams, right? I mean, we are led to believe, though, Huss, that the Winnipeg Jets are a defensively gifted team. We're led to believe that because that's the case. So I don't think the Jets need to be going into this game thinking they need to score 4 or 5 goals to win, right? They might be thinking they need to score 2 or 3 to win, and then keeping the Blues off the score sheet. Playing
Game 2 blueprint.
defensively sound hockey, right? I don't think the Jets are at all interested in getting, and you would probably frame this the other way given the talent that's on Winnipeg, but Winnipeg doesn't want to get in a shootout with St. Louis, right? I mean, they want to play defensively sound hockey. They want to play tough, physical, up the middle hockey. And so, in that respect, I mean, I look at you look at that second line, and it's hard not to be a little underwhelmed when you're trying to put it in the context of wanting to score more goals. I don't know, perhaps, an Iafallo was a nice compliment to align with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, simply from the fact that he was hard on the puck. He brought that element to that line. Like, if the puck, he would go get the puck and he would dish it. Now, I do like his penchant for shooting. I like his penchant for getting the puck towards the net, and maybe that's where the second line will need to generate their offense, right? Lots of cycling in the offensive zone and pressure and heavy concentration pucks towards the net, right? I just you look at a guy like Vladimir Nemestikov, and we've talked glowingly about his ability to fill in and go up and down the lineup, but we've also talked about his inability. The reason why he's not a bona fide top six player is his lack of finish. And so, are we really expecting a guy like Cole Perfetti to carry that line? I mean, maybe he's not being asked to do that, but he might be being asked to do that too, from the offensive side of things. So,
I'll say this about Perfetti quickly. You look back at, listen, I don't think one goal is going to change anything. Although, if they find a way to make it 2-0 in Game 4, maybe it does. But Perfetti was the one guy on that line that had, I think I counted 3 pretty glorious chances to score. And, listen, the finishing's got to be better, especially on a player like that. But I am interested to see how that line looks. I think the big benefit, though, comes on the Lowry line, getting Nino back with those guys. They need to be a force. They need to be dictating a lot of the physicality that the St. Louis Blues were doing to Winnipeg. That needs to be on them. Some production would be nice. And then having Tanev slide back in with Morgan Barron, I think adds a much greater speed element to that fourth line, which can be, which can hopefully help the team win a hockey game. Hammer, listen.
To your point, though, Huss, everyone's got to play their role.
Yeah,
right. Everyone,
exactly.
and now everyone looks to be in their role. Is a good sign.
Well, and listen, and Arniel talked about it yesterday. I mean, there's not a group of players, top line, middle six, defense, goaltending, that doesn't need to step up and be better than they were in Game 3. It's pretty simple now. We'll see them do it. Before we go, John Hodge is coming up in a minute, and he's got a mock draft, and we're going to talk a little bit of the CFL draft tonight. Any thoughts before we get into this conversation with John on what the Bombers will do tonight with their picks? And, I hadn't thought a lot about the Canadian quarterbacks until I was kind of looking at John's mock draft. This kid from Wilfrid Laurier that thought might be drafted in the NFL still doesn't have a contract. What do you think the chances are that the Bombers might actually take, more likely him, but I guess we could include Curtis Rourke, who has been drafted by the Niners and I think makes him a less attractive early pick. Could the Bombers take a QB early in this draft, knowing that they don't really have a quarterback of the future right now behind Zach Collaros?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are drafting for a quarterback out of this year to replace Zach Collaros? No. That being said, 2 very intriguing picks, Huss. And if you look at it, if you were to identify areas on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers lineup, you would probably look at offensive line. Like the Bombers are primed to start 2 Canadians this year, a shift away from 3 Canadians on the line, which could tell you a couple things. They're obviously short. I mean, they have 2 Eli and Gabe Wallace that might be able to go in and start this year, but more likely you're looking at 3 Americans. And then you also have to factor in Patty Neufeld's 36 years old. Chris Kolonkowski's 32 years old. So you need to 33, I think Chris Kolonkowski is. Anyways, so you need to kind of have guys waiting in the wings, and the Bombers have been had such a luxury over the years of having their starting Canadians and then having guys in waiting and having kind of that perfect, okay, Michael Couture, you want $200 and something thousand now after some solid seasons in Winnipeg? That's unfortunate. We can't pay that, but here's Chris Kolankowski. Those options, even though I mentioned guys like Tui Eli, Gabe Wallace, they would have to come in and be starters. That depth behind them is not where it used to be and needs to be improved. Now, the issue here is that when you talk to scouts, when you talk to people about this draft, that's usually what you stock up on is your O-lineman. That's who you want to go after. Well, this particular class is viewed as weak in the O-line position. So, there's lots of talk about when you look about who you're trying to replace, right? You have this guy named Jackson Finley, who's in the University of Western, and John will probably go deeper into who he is. He's a guy that, you look at, he's played halfback and corner in school, and maybe can play the Ford type-ish kind of, style. Like, I don't think he's going to be that guy. I know he's not going to be that guy, but he can play strong side linebackers. When you look at how the Bombers employ their Canadians, you look at a guy like Reha Kramdi, who's in that position right now, and you need a Canadian backup, and maybe this guy could be that guy in a pinch. Outside of those things, I think that you could look at quarterbacks. You could look at opportunities to find a guy, especially if he's not signed an NFL contract and doesn't seem to be wanted, if you will, for lack of a better term, by the NFL. Then you maybe make that jump. We've seen that in the past with the Bombers, take guys that were, NFL guys. And so I wouldn't rule it out. I don't have a lot of insight into thinking that they would, but I do think that the quarterback position is something that the Bombers are very much aware that they will likely need to upgrade or finalize by start of next season. And that's understanding that Zach Collaros probably doesn't have a ton more years left in him and might have just one more year left in him. And that's assuming he can play a full 18-game season. But as far as like bringing quarterbacks in, it would be very nice to replicate a Curtis Rourke, Nathan Rourke situation here. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. As for taking flyers, I don't know. I just think when you look at that, the importance of that position, the importance of your first round picks, there might be another team out there. There's some talk in Saskatchewan about that, about how gifted they are buying their O-line and whatnot. So maybe there's some competition for those things, and you do see, those outliers. But the reality is if you probably have to give up an early pick, because if it gets to like the second or third round, it doesn't feel as big of a flyer, given the way drafts usually turn out and players produced in each round. So that's kind of that's the ultimate gamble in those situations, Huss, is if you're kind of hoping a guy doesn't get an opportunity, and then if he doesn't get an opportunity in the NFL, that he'd be willing to come to the CFL. Because at the same time, well, it would be kind of nice, and it would certainly be nice if you could get him, but it would be, it would put a little bit of like, sizzle in your draft pick selections. Might even be exciting at this idea that you have a quarterback that could one day play and, obviously has Canadian roots, but building your quarterback out of the CFL draft is not exactly traditional. So we'll see what happens.
It isn't, but I'll tell you what, this Elgersma is a really, really exciting prospect. I mean, there's been more interest in him and like, this isn't a Canadian guy that's playing in the NCAA. He was at Wilfrid Laurier last year. So I'm here for it. I mean, they've got 2 picks in the second round. I know they'll probably want to go
which is scary in and of itself, to be honest with you. Like,
DBO line, they get those players. I guess we'll see. We're going to talk about it with John coming up. I know you and the CFL, the team at the Winnipeg Free Press will be all over this as we count down and get closer to some training camps. But first, we'll find out who the Bombers are adding to the organization tonight. Always great to catch up with you, Hammer. Appreciate the sane, calm nature of your visit today, even if we did have to talk about the topic that we hit that we will not be getting at anymore.
We won't be talking about. Don't worry, I won't bring
Positive
it up
vibes
again.
going into Game 5. Have a great one, man, and enjoy the game tomorrow.
Always a pleasure, my friend. You know I like to keep things interesting. Have a great one, and everybody else out there, have a great day.
As always, Jeff Hamilton at Jeff K. Hamilton on X, and you can read all of his work in the Winnipeg Free Press. I love the message that I just got from Greg at Royal. He says to me, well, fellas, Royal Sports, all caps, knows we are going to round 2. So fully stocked up on new hoodies, crews, and tees. And the next whiteout hat just came in. These whiteout hats are very cool. Jets on the front. One has Winnipeg whiteout on the right side. The other one has 37 MVP on the right side. And the other one's got a really cool kind of picture of the bridge downtown with 204 on top of it. There's also a ton of new hoodies in white, various Jets logos. So if you missed out when the big rush came in, reinforcements have arrived at your whiteout headquarters, Royal Sports. I can tell you the hoodie that I got, I actually have the new logo on it in a white on white. But there are so many great ones down there. So hopefully you're all keeping the faith. You're ready to bring it tomorrow night for the late night game at Canada Life Center. If you're heading to the game and you haven't done it yet, get down to Royal Sports for all your Jet white gear, and check out everything coming in for spring as well. Bikes, soccer, softball, baseball, you name it. Royal Sports has it. 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information, and get those whiteout hats while they are available, because the first one sold out in about 36 hours once they came in. Hey, we got 4 games tonight. We'll get to those and the CFL draft coming up in the Coolbet lines in a few minutes. But don't forget, BP is your playoff headquarters. If you're looking for a great spot to watch 4 massive games tonight in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, why not head down to BP, dive into that playoff feature menu, including the double trouble nachos, the Canadian all-star poutine with that maple gravy, unlike anything I've had before, but man, it was good. Wing flights are back. If you're one of those crazies that loves the real hot stuff, you can step up to the Scoville Showdown. And of course, you're going to want to try the Wingman Pizza. Connor Hrabchak gave it an 8.8. And the Triple Pep Pizza, which I tried last week, which was absolutely phenomenal. Boston Pizza, your playoff headquarters tonight and every night. And if you are staying at home, get the great taste of BP ordered into yourself at bostonpizza.com. Let's give a big cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug, Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, as we continue WST.
Day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
As I promised, we will be talking to John Hodge in just a minute. But before we do that, to wrap everything Jets today, Gabe Vilardi is back. He will be playing tomorrow night, and he spoke to the media today. Here's what Vilardi had to say just about missing the start of the playoffs.
It is tough. Yeah, it's definitely tough to watch, especially going into St. Louis, their crowd's so into it. It's kind of like team versus everybody. Kind of feels like that when you're in that building. So it's definitely tough to not be out there and feel like, you're a part of the highs, the lows, whatever. Just feels like you're kind of on your own. But it is what it is. Now I'm back, and it's that.
And hoping to make a big impact tomorrow. Here's Vilardi on what kind of impact he hopes to make returning for Game 5.
I don't know. I'm hopeful to make a big impact. I don't know. I got to, go out there and just, I'm not going to be a Superman or anybody like that. I'm just going to go play, and hopefully I can help them two out and help the team out and, hopefully we can get back and get a win tomorrow. But I'm not, I'm not thinking too much about stuff like that. I'm just going in there and playing my game and hopefully, make some good plays out there.
All right, so Gabe's locked and loaded and ready to go and hoping to make a big impact, not necessarily Superman-esque, but hey, if he wants to rip that jersey off and show an S on his chest after scoring a couple tomorrow night, we're here for it. Here's Coach Arniel on getting Gabe Vilardi back in the lineup.
We got to practice in St. Louis the other day. Got the morning skate prior to our game time skate. Now it's green light now, so there's no holding back. This is playoff hockey. There's no weeding his way in. This is we got to go.
So from that perspective, sometimes timing and endurance factor into it, but with his hands, it looks like there is no rust on those paws at all.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously that's one of his strengths, his ability to make plays, do things in close around the net or in the corners, shielding pucks. That's an area for him that's real strong. But it'll first couple of shifts he's going to have to get up to speed. It's going to be a heck of a lot faster now than it was when he left us. But I get all the confidence as I watch him the last few days in practice that he'll be all right.
All right, there's Coach Arniel on Gabe's return, and here's just Arniel and more about the excitement to have Gabe back in the fight with his teammates.
We're all excited for it. Obviously, on the ice there, it just helps balance us back out a bit here, and that's what's important. I mean, anytime you get a top six forward back in your lineup, it's a big boost. And so, we need him to do what he does best, and he has something he has to bring to the table. But at the same time, we still have a lot of guys that we all have to elevate our game. There's a level that we have to get back up to again, and make sure that we stay at it.
One spot I think we can count on that Gabriel Vilardi will certainly improve the team's plight is on the power play, where he's been such a big part of that number one ranked power play all season long. Here's what Arnie had to say about the hopes for Gabe impacting PP1.
Well, he just becomes another threat, right? So, Casey's shot's a threat. J-Mo's shot is a threat. Scheif's playmaking ability, Fetz in the pop is a threat. Now there's a fifth one there, and he if you leave him alone, he can do things down there, and whether that's take the puck to net himself or if that's to him to make. He's a really good passer just as well, and so he becomes again. Now you got your five threats that make it a little bit more difficult for the penalty killers to try to shut everybody off.
All right, so there's Coach Arniel, Gabe Vilardi from practice today. If you tuned in late, the great news, in addition to Vilardi's return, was Nikolai Ehlers was on the ice skating, and that apparently had not been his first time on the ice. Not expecting him anytime soon, but certainly a welcome sight because as we've talked a lot about that scoring outside of the top line, this team is missing Nikolai Ehlers in a big way, and the power play certainly impacted as well, but great news that Gabe Vilardi is coming back. We're going to get ready for the CFL draft in just a second with John Hodge. Quick Breezy Bend golf report. Breezy's open and looking as good as ever and getting ready for what's going to be an amazing season as they get ready to host the 2025 Manitoba Open. PGA Tour is at the CJ Cup. Byron Nelson this week at TPC Craig Ranch. We'll hit that tomorrow, and I think Pat Gregoire and I will put together a little WST partner parlay for the golf tourney. We'll hit tomorrow on the Coolbet lines. But in the meantime, if you got interest in finding out more about making Breezy Bend your long-term golfing home for you and your family, give our pal Corey Johnson a call over at the clubhouse or find out more online at breezybend.ca. As mentioned, CFL draft is tonight. Let's welcome in John Hodge from 3 Down Nation to get his thoughts on the first couple rounds and what the Bombers might do. All right, tonight is the 2025 CFL draft. That's right, the season's not too far away. NFL draft in the books. Let's get ready for tonight's selections with John Hodge of 3 Down Nation. John, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great, Huss. I'm doing real well. And I want to give a quick shout out, if that's okay,
Please
to
do.
Tom, who I ran into yesterday at a store in Winnipeg, who said he is a massive WST fan. So shout out to Tom. we always love when people are supporting local journalism.
Love it. Well, I guess Tom will be pumped that you're back on the big show, and we're talking some Bombers right now. It's been very quiet in the CFL for the last 6 months or so, I guess, or 6 weeks, with the exception of one thing, new commissioner. Just before we dive into the draft, what do you think about Stu Johnson, the president of TSN, moving over to lead the league forward?
Yeah, I think it's exciting, right? I mean, talk is cheap, and first impressions are just that. They're first impressions. I think it matters a lot more what you do in the weeks, months, and years to come. But for a first impression, I thought Stuart Johnston made a very positive one. I'd spoken to people publicly and privately for a few weeks leading up to his introductory press conference after the initial announcement came out, and people raved about him. They really did. They talked about him like he was a great leader. No BS, but still very positive and very smart. So that was all very positive stuff. Obviously, he knows the media landscape extremely well. That's his background, having been at TSN for 28 years. The CFL has a very critical media rights deal upcoming with their television rights after the 2026 season, currently up for grabs. So I thought it was good. I especially liked what he said about 2025. He basically said, I'm not here to change anything. I'm just here to implement the plan that's already in place. And I think if you were to be critical of Randy Ambrosie's tenure, largely the reason that I think a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouths about Randy's commissionership is the fact that he routinely overpromised and underdelivered, right? He would make big, bold, outlandish, bombastic promises that at the time sounded great. And then when he failed to follow those up necessarily with the appropriate action or garner the appropriate response, I think it became easy for fans to kind of tune him out. So I think that's part of the reason why the Board of Governors elected not to continue his contract. And I think Stuart Johnston has already shown that he's learned from that lesson a little bit. He's not here to overpromise and underdeliver. He's here to be realistic, set the stage for expectations that he's confident he can meet. And I'm sure he'd obviously love to surpass those expectations as we move forward here.
Tonight is draft day, always a big day in the Canadian Football League. And for many young men looking to earn a living in the 3-down game. But as we know, the Stanley Cup playoffs can affect everything. We saw the French language debate in the federal election moved. And we have a programming note for CFL fans that are looking forward to seeing the 3-Down Nation live stream. Tell us about the time change and what you guys have set up for tonight's draft.
So the draft was bumped up because tonight is Game 5 between the Leafs and the Sens in Ottawa. So at 6 p.m. Eastern time, 5 o'clock Winnipeg time, 3-Down Nation will be having a fantastic draft live stream on YouTube, our Facebook, everywhere you can find us on socials. Ben Grant and JC Abbott will be hosting as the members of the panel. They are both extraordinarily knowledgeable about the draft, admittedly more so than myself. They're fantastic. It'll be a great show. And I'll be doing written content throughout the draft, analyzing each pick as they're coming in. So whether you're a Bomber fan or a fan of any other team, if you want to know what you need to know, right, about each individual player. Because, CFL draft, a lot of these guys are mysteries, right, to a lot of fans. They don't necessarily know, okay, what does it mean that he went to this school? Where did he play? How productive was he? What was his testing like? Like, they don't know those things going in. So I'll be there on the written side at 3downnation.com to be giving that information. And, of course, please check out our live stream with JC and Ben doing it on video in real time. And, of course, it's free.
John, I'm going to put you on the spot just before we get to the draft tonight. The global draft went this morning. Bombers picked at 2 and took Kamari Munir-Bailey, a D lineman from Weber State from Great Britain. Do we know anything about the guy the Bombers picked number 2 in the global draft?
Yeah, so I'm not a global draft guy, but my colleague JC is an absolute global draft guy. And so he sent me some notes, credit to JC. He thinks that Munir-Bailey, whose name I hope I'm saying correctly, is legit. He was a third-team All-American at Weber State. He's a former member of the British junior national basketball team, and he has a legit agent. He actually has the same agent as Kenny Lawler. So if you put any stock into who a player is represented by, he's got a legitimate agent who's done big money NFL deals, big money CFL deals, also represents McLeod Bethel Thompson. So this is a guy, I think, obviously with the Bombers trading up to number 2, they wanted somebody. They coveted this guy particularly. The number 1 pick was a punter. It always is in the global draft, it seems. So trading up to get Monier Bailey, I think that speaks to the depth that Winnipeg maybe felt like they lacked at defensive end. Obviously, they went out and got James Vaughters. We know who the 2 starters are going to be at defensive end, barring some type of freakish miracle or an injury with Willie Jefferson and James Vaughters. But they need to add some depth behind those guys. And clearly the Bombers were high on Monier Bailey, his raw athleticism, and hopefully his ability to get after the passer in the 3-down game.
Now, as far as tonight's CFL draft goes, I have been basically preparing for it by reading your mock drafts in 3-Down Nation. I mean, listen, it's tough to, have a good knowledge base of players from coast to coast in Canada. The one thing that stood out to me, John, I don't know if this is a trend that we've been seeing the last couple of years or will continue, but it seems like there's a lot of NCAA teams represented in early rounds. Is that a trend that you've noticed? I mean, are we seeing more and more Canadians being drafted out of NCAA programs as opposed to U Sports has sort of been more the norm?
I do think that that's a trend that's happened. It's happened kind of gradually, kind of slowly. If you go back 30, 40 years, you'd certainly see a lot more U Sports teams and prospects at the top of the draft. There have been more Canadians going to NCAA programs over the years, but I do think that one thing that is changing right now in the landscape a little bit is with the transient nature of collegiate football down south, with the transfer portal and the NIL money that's going up the wazoo all over the place, is that more NCAA programs are actually recruiting U Sports players, right? And we saw that a few years ago with Dean Leonard, Tavius Robinson going from Calgary and Guelph, respectively, to Ole Miss during the COVID-19 pandemic. And from there, with the Rebels, became NFL draft picks. Dean Leonard is still with the LA Chargers. Tavius Robinson was a mid-round pick to the Baltimore Ravens. He's still there. So I do believe that there are NCAA programs who realize that there might be some untapped gems up in the Canadian collegiate ranks. Right? I mean, in the U.S., everybody knows all the players. They all, from the time they're in grade 9 even sometimes, and then certainly by the time they're grade 10, 11, they have their star ratings. Everybody knows who the recruits are. But there are some players who maybe slip through the cracks in Canada. So not only are there more NCAA prospects, but I think that in future years, you could see, not all, some guys are very happy to stay in Canada, but some prospects are going to, after a year or two of playing a high level of U Sports football, they're going to get recruited down south. A perfect example would be Gio Vaccaro, reigning JP Metros Trophy winner as the top lineman in all of U Sports football, played at the University of Manitoba the last many years. He transferred to Purdue this offseason. So next year when he's in the draft, he's going to be listed as a guy who went to Purdue when in fact he was only there for a year, spent most of his collegiate career in Manitoba. So I do think there are some instances where the draft is maybe a little more U Sports heavy than it would appear on paper because of the way some guys split their collegiate careers. But yes, there is more of an NCAA influence on the draft, I believe, than ever before.
As far as the top of the draft, and folks, I'll direct you over to 3-Down Nation for John's final mock draft. Calgary, of course, rough season last year. They're on the clock with the number 1 pick. You've got Wyoming linebacker Connor Hrabchak going to Calgary. How much competition is there for the number 1 pick, or is this a pretty clear-cut choice in your mind?
I think there's an argument to be made still for 2 guys. A few weeks ago, I boiled it down to probably 5. Right now, I believe there's only 2 players in consideration for that top pick for the Stampeders. Keelan White, receiver out of Montana, would be one. Connor Hrabchak, the linebacker out of Wyoming, you mentioned, Huss, would be the other. The reason I mocked Hrabchak is because I think he's a better positional fit for the Stampeders. This is a team that started Cameron Judge at weak side linebacker last year. He got traded to the Toronto Argonauts. The Stampeders repatriated Fraser Sopik, former Western linebacker in free agency, who they drafted. He then left the team for a couple years. I think he's penciled into the starter, but I don't think that Fraser Sopik, all due respect to him, he's a good player, but he's not Cameron Judge. I think Connor Hrabchak has a higher floor. He's somebody who I think you could loosely compare in the testing side of it, the frame side of it, to an Alex Singleton, who obviously was a tremendous pick for the Calgary Stampeders back in the day. I'm not saying Hrabchak is as good as Alexander or as good as Alex Singleton right now, but I think he's got the tools to develop into an Alex Singleton type player. And obviously the added benefit for a guy like a Connor Hrabchak is he's not only going to potentially be a starter down the road, because let's not forget, Alex Singleton was not a starter at the start of his rookie season in Calgary. He cut his teeth on special teams, and I think that's the unit where the Stampeders need to improve as well. Keelan White, the receiver, would not have the same value as a special teamer, but he does also meet a positional need. This is a position where the Stampeders start Jalen Philpott, who's had some injury problems. Clark Barnes is going to a contract year. He's also had some injury problems, and this is also a team that lost former first-round pick Cole Tucker to retirement. So I think White could be a fit there. The other benefit, Huss, is Dave Dickinson, for those who don't know, is a Montana legend. Like, he is in the Grizzlies Hall of Fame. I believe his number is even retired. Like, you go to Montana, I've spoken to CFL scouts who have gone there. When you get into a cab and they know you're in football, they say, do you know who Dave Dickinson is? Like, he is still 30 years later a legend in Missoula. So I think that could be a fit as well. So I think those are the top two guys that the Stampeders will key in on, and I believe one of them will be the top pick of today's draft.
All right, let's focus in on the Bombers, who are of most concern to fans around these WST streets. Bombers are picking sixth. In your final mock, you've got Western DB Jackson Finlay coming in. First of all, what do you think the Bombers are looking for in that first selection, and why might this be a fit?
Well, I think when you look at the Bombers roster, the spots that need addressing, and arguably this roster is in more need of some depth help than it has been the last few drafts. I think offensive line is a priority. There's not a ton of offensive linemen available who would be worthy of a first-round pick. I think if Christopher Fortin, who I've mocked to the Montreal Alouettes at 5, if he's on the board, I think he's the pick for the Bombers. Really high floor center and guard who I think could be an all-star in the CFL in time. But I've got Jackson Finlay there right now because I think he's the perfect fit for them on the defensive side of the ball. This is a team that in years prior has started Reddick Ramsey at strong side linebacker, but he was more of a gravy Canadian, right? A guy who they didn't need to start for the ratio because they had guys like Tyrell Ford starting at corner. That's no longer the case. And let's also remember this team might only start 2 Canadians on the offensive line following the departure of Liam Dobson in free agency. So suddenly that strong side linebacker spot is a must Canadian spot, or at least a DB spot, whether it's safety or Sam, is a must Canadian spot. And Jackson Finlay, I think, is that guy. I think he could probably walk onto a CFL team right now and be a starting safety. 6'3", 207 pounds, ran sub 4.6 at the combine. That's legit speed, not a burner, but very legit speed. Super productive with the Mustangs. And he's also got some really high intangibles off the field as a guy who wants to become a pediatric oncologist when he has done his playing career, which is a pretty remarkable goal. He's won some community awards at Western for his work in the community, and he's also got football in his blood. His great-grandfather, his grandfather, and his father all played in the CFL. So for a team like Winnipeg that does care a lot about the off-field stuff, the intangibles, some teams don't. Winnipeg is one of the ones that do. I think that Jackson Finlay, assuming he's on the board, would be a really nice fit for Winnipeg.
Now, John, I'm not sure I've ever gotten particularly excited about a second-round CFL mock draft, but my attention was piqued when I saw who you had going to the Bombers at 15, and that's Wilfrid Laurier quarterback Taylor Elgersma, who has seen his stock go straight up in the eyes of the National Football League over the past few months. Very rare we ever have this conversation about a Canadian quarterback from U Sports. One pick right afterwards is Curtis Rourke, Nathan Rourke's brother, who, of course, was drafted by Kyle Shanahan and the Niners in the 7th round. Tell us about Elgersma, what the Bombers or any team has to be considering when they pick him. And if he did come here to Winnipeg, with Zach Collaros clearly on the back nine of his career, what that might mean moving forward for Winnipeg.
Well, with the second round, Huss, I will remind you, Brady Oliveira was a second-round pick. So just keep that in mind when you're reading the second round of a mock draft. There are some MOP caliber players who can go in the second round. I'm not saying it happens every year, but it can happen, and beyond the second round even. But as for Elgersma, this is an interesting story because this mock draft that I wrote that you're referencing was done prior to the NFL draft. The consensus heading into that event was Taylor Elgersma was going to sign with an NFL team as an undrafted free agent, could have even potentially been a periphery pick in the 7th round. Not only did that not happen, he has not signed an NFL contract. He still could. He's got some minicamp invites. But as of now, he is theoretically a CFL player in 2025, which was not the consensus that I got from scouts going into the NFL draft, they thought he might be a CFL guy in 2026. So in other words, waiting a year for that to take place. So heading into that event, I think a lot of CFL teams saw Elgersma as a second-round pick. Some teams still do, but I don't think anybody would be surprised if he was a first-round pick, especially because if you're a team like Winnipeg, which, as you illustrated, Huss, doesn't really have an obvious quarterback of the future. And we've seen, by the way, what a guy like Nathan Rourke can do, what he's done in BC. Obviously, he's a sensational player on the field, but he is a guy who has revolutionized the marketing and the relevance of that team within that community, right? As a BC-born quarterback who is not only a star on the field, but off the field. Trey Ford has done something similar at Edmonton, reigniting that fan base that had stopped filling Commonwealth Stadium a few years ago. All of a sudden, Trey Ford becomes the face of that team, and there's excitement. There's renewed energy, right? Obviously, a quarterback's always marketable. It's the most important position in the game. But I think a Canadian quarterback at Edmonton and BC has shown that it goes a step beyond that it can really revolutionize a team. I mean, if Zach Collaros was Canadian, like obviously Zach Collaros is a star in Winnipeg. He's gone to 5 Grey Cups, winning 2, all that stuff. But if he was Canadian, like if he was born in Brampton or Red Deer or something like that, he would be an even bigger star, dare I say, in the Canadian Football League and in Winnipeg. So I think if you've got a chance to draft Taylor Elgersma, if you're the Bombers at 6, there's no guarantee this guy's going to be there when you pick again at 15. I think there's a legitimate chance the Toronto Argonauts take Taylor Elgersma at 7 if he falls there. Should be noted, Elgersma participated in training camp with the Argonauts previously through the CFL's quarterback internship program. I've had multiple sources indicate that their quarterbacks coach, Mike Miller, absolutely loves him. And once you get into the second round, I mean, could Hamilton take him as a potential heir apparent to Bo Levi Mitchell at 9? Could the Edmonton Elks look to find a Canadian depth quarterback behind Trey Ford and potentially even succeed him one day at 10? It's possible. BC at 11, they also have a Canadian quarterback who's a starter. Theoretically, you'd love to have a blue chip Canadian quarterback behind Nathan Rourke there. And then Ottawa, like Saskatchewan, right? Like there's theoretically Taylor Elgersma can help all 9 teams in the CFL. And I think that is something that could push him up the board. DB, super deep position. D-line, super deep position. There are going to be some good DBs and some good D linemen who I think fall as teams prioritize other positions, including quarterback, knowing that they can get good DBs and good D linemen later in the draft because they'll fall down the board.
It's a pretty exciting prospect, to be honest. I mean, just everything I've seen and read about this Elgersma and just how much he had been on NFL radars after his incredible career at Laurier would make him a pretty good candidate, especially with, to your point, what we've seen from other Canadian quarterbacks in recent history. I guess the question is, if the Bombers did covet him and realize that maybe the situation has changed since last weekend with the NFL draft, if they considered taking him off the board, if available, at 6, can they still get the help they need in round 2 at a spot like DB or alongside linebacker?
Yeah, I think you'd be optimistic at that point that maybe a Nate Boscheman falls to 15. Boscheman, the reigning President's Trophy winner as the top defensive player, non-lineman defensive player in youth sports football at the University of Calgary. He's a ball hawk. He projects potentially as a year 1 rookie starter at safety, who should be a very good special teams player. And if you don't get him, Mac Bannatyne is another very good safety prospect out of the University of Alberta. Actually ran the fastest of himself, Findlay, and Boscheman at the combine, running a 4.52, which is like legit corner speed, even better safety speed. A little bit of a smaller frame, but I think that those could potentially be targets for Winnipeg at 15 if they do not get a defensive back at 6, whether it's taking an offensive lineman like Christopher Fortin out of UConn, or whether that's taking Taylor Elgersma, the quarterback, and making a big splash there at 6. Then the Bombers, of course, have an extra pick that they got at 18. Right now, in the most recent mock I had Findlay, the DB, at 6, quarterback Taylor Elgersma at 15, and then Eric Anderson, offensive lineman out of Western. Would not surprise me if those were the 3 positions that the Bombers drafted in those 3 picks. The question is, what order do they go? I think O-line is a priority. I think DB is a priority. Yeah, there's an argument to be made for help along the defensive end position. That being said, we just saw Winnipeg take a high pick in the global draft with that. They also brought in Brock Gowanlock, a Canadian defensive end who played collegiately at the University of Manitoba in free agency. Receiver, I think they need to add a depth piece there. You know, they just traded for Matthew Paterson, a Canadian running back who had a sensational collegiate career at the University of Alberta. That's probably not a position of need for them anymore. But I think the DB, O-line, quarterback, 3 spots to watch for the Bombers. And again, would not surprise me if that was their plan of attack for their top picks today.
John, thanks for jumping on. Really intrigued about this draft, especially from a Blue Bombers perspective. 5 p.m. Winnipeg time. The draft gets going. Go to the 3 Down Nation YouTube. Ben Grant and JC Abbott will have you covered. And, of course, John will be writing with a ton of great CFL content at 3 Down Nation all night and into next week as well. Thanks for doing this, pal. Enjoy the draft tonight.
Thanks for having me, Huss. Anytime.
All right, great stuff with John Hodge, and a perfect little segue into our Coolbet lines for today. Now, before we get to the hockey, of course, Coolbet has some props for us up at the CFL draft. Now, it's interesting. I caught up with John a little earlier, and at that point, Connor Shea was minus 182 to be the first pick in the draft. Was then checking it a little while ago, and it was minus 143. And I will be honest, I was putting a couple bets in while we were playing the John Hodge, interview. And I got in on Keelan White, who was plus 140 in the morning when we talked to John. Got him at 200. And I don't know whether I'm specifically moving lines or what, but almost immediately Keelan White is down to plus 150. What's interesting is this Tiger Shanks came down significantly to 3-1 right now. So the first overall pick looks like this. Even money on Connor Shea. We'll get back to the screen there.
Sorry, I'm editing stuff here. I forget.
Yeah, just lock in, buddy.
We're good. We're good.
Keelan White plus 150. Tiger Shanks 3-1, and then it goes all the way down to Daryl Newell at 12-1, and then Christopher Fortin 65-1, Hayden Harris 65-1. So it certainly looks like the top pick is coming from one of those top 3. I'm going to go with the Montana receiver Keelan White for that one. Position of overall pick. This is basically the same thing as the first overall pick. Linebacker, even money. Receiver plus 150. Offensive lineman, 3-1 or other. Now, the 2 quarterbacks that we talked about in this draft, Curtis Rourke was over under 6.5 today. It's now 7.5. But I really think that this Taylor Elgersma is going to go before Curtis Rourke. I guess, as Amber said, I mean, you might have a flyer from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It all depends on how special, CFL teams believe this young man to be. But we've seen 2 Canadian quarterbacks play recently in the league. Of course, Trey Ford now leading Edmonton, Nathan Rourke in BC. And the Bombers, what could be better for the Bombers than drafting a young guy if they believe in him and think that he can be a legit star in the CFL and have him learn the Bombers system and spend at least a year behind Zach Collaros and seeing what makes Zach the quarterback that he is with his preparation and all that. I think it would be perfect. So I'm taking under 7.5 on Taylor Elgersma. Again, the Curtis Rourke one, I think it's probably more likely over, just because I think teams are going to see that, hey, listen, you're getting drafted by the Niners and Kyle Shanahan. You're probably not going to be in the mix anytime soon. So my 2 favorite plays, Keelan White for the first overall pick. That's plus 150 right now at Coolbet. And Taylor Elgersma under 7.5 to go in the first 7 picks of the draft tonight. Those are the main props for it all. There's 2 other players, Jonathan Senecal, draft position, and Arnaud Desjardins. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about those guys, so I will stay out of that one. But again, if you want a little action on the draft that starts at 5 p.m., check it out. And I'd pay attention to this line movement that we'll see over the next little while. Sometimes word gets out, then everything's off the board. Tonight in the NHL playoffs, though, Oh, do we have a doozy tonight of action. Starting off at 6. The reason why the CFL draft is at 5. Game 5 between the Ottawa Senators and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Leafs minus 172 favorites in this game. Ottawa plus 145. Sens are going to be tough to kill. I mean, 3 overtime games? It's been a great series so far. I do think the Leafs win this series, but I am here for a game 6, and I'm here for all the conversations surrounding the Leafs that they lose 2 straight to Ottawa. Might be a little similar to some of the conversations some of you had after game 4 between the Jets and the Blues. The Canes are a big favorite, minus 278 to finish off the New Jersey Devils. Devils are plus 230 facing elimination. And then these 2 late games should be amazing. 8:30, we get the Wild and Golden Knights. Vegas is minus 227. Minnesota's plus 190. Like, all due respect to the Knights and how good of a team they are and tying up the series in the Twin Cities, these games have been so good and so close. I think Minnesota is way undervalued for this game tonight. If I had to set the line, I think it would be more like Minnesota plus 135 or plus 140. The way that top line is playing, might be a little flyer on the Wild tonight at plus 190. And then the Oiler-King game, game 5, Oilers, like the Blues with the momentum going into game 5 after 2 big wins at home. LA looking to, like the Jets, get back to their game and be the best home team in the league all year. LA's minus 125 and the Kings plus 106. I have a lot of time for the underdogs in these games tonight, to be honest. I mean, not so much the Devils. But I will tell you, if you are interested in maybe doing a bit of a Hail Mary on tonight's games, I just plugged in Minnesota to win, plus 190, Ottawa to win, plus 145, and Edmonton to win. Comes out to plus 1364. And just to give you an idea about the value you're getting betting at Coolbet as opposed to some of the other places, I did look at one of the government-sponsored books today, and I plugged in these same 3 games, and it was like plus 1125. So it is important where you're getting your numbers from, folks, and where you're putting it. If you want to put yourself in the best position to maximize your betting dollar, Coolbet certainly has it. So as I said, I am going to put a small little sprinkle on a 3-gamer tonight. 3 road dogs, Wild, Sens, and Oilers tonight. It's pushing 14-1 right now over at Coolbet. As far as the NBA goes tonight, the NBA, like, again, I don't watch the NBA during the regular season. As the playoffs go on, I'll certainly be spending some more time watching it. We've got a few games tonight. Pacers, big favorites, 8-point favorites against the Bucks. The Knicks are 5.5-point favorites against the Pistons. The Pistons got absolutely screwed over in those 2 games at home. Won't go into all of that, but it is clear that there's haves and have-nots in the NBA. Tough for the Pistons because they deserve a better fate after what they got dealt with coming back. And then a couple late games as well. Magic and Celtics. Celtics are 11.5-point favorites. And then probably the best and closest series of the entire playoffs right now has been the Clippers and the Nuggets. Huge game tonight in that series. LA, 2-point favorites, minus 125 on the money line. The Nugs, plus 106. And 2-point home dogs. Series prices are still up for everything in the NBA. By the way, I actually should get back and just do a quick check-in on the series prices for Winnipeg. So the Jets number, I did think it was maybe a little high yesterday at minus 182. Blues at plus 150. Jets are still, though, a significant favorite, minus 172 to win the series. The Blues plus 140. Kings and Oilers. This was a pick'em. Kings a slight favorite at minus 114. Edmonton 106. The Minnesota Wild plus 210 to win their series. Obviously, they don't have the benefit of home ice. Vegas minus 263. And after last night's drubbing in Dallas, the Stars are minus 217 favorites to win the series. Colorado is plus 175. Up 3-1. Leafs are still a big minus 1667 favorite. Ottawa plus 860 if you think they can pull off the miracle comeback. All waiting for you there at Coolbet. We've also got CJ Cup by Renelson odds up. Liv, I guess, is in Korea this weekend, so that is there. Soccer, MLS, the Kentucky Derby is up, PWHL. They've got it all over at Coolbet. If you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Oh, and there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, Remis, that we have in,
yes,
I believe this is the season bets. Here we are. How many Game 7s are we going to get? I brought this up earlier, and I love the fact that Coolbet's thrown this out. So all 4 Western series are tied 2-2, or were tied 2-2. Dallas is now up 3-2. Plus 130 for over 2.5 Game 7s in the West. Do you think, well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we got 4 Game 7s in the West, to be perfectly honest. I think Minnesota can absolutely force a Game 7 even if they don't win tonight. I like Colorado to bounce back in Game 6 at home and force a Game 7. I think based on what we've seen from Winnipeg and St. Louis so far, Game 7 here in the Peg on Sunday night is probably highly likely. It could be all 4. I'm actually here for the plus 130 on over 2.5 Game 7s.
Yeah, and when you mention the underdogs, I mean, Minnesota, heavy underdog tonight. They've been in all the games in this series, just losing in overtime. I mean, talk about a close series and close loss. Credit to Vegas for winning that one and tying it up. You know, can Colorado win at home and force a Game 7? I would say yes there. I don't know, I think Blues, Jets, that seems to be headed to 7. So I'll say those 2 for sure. And if you want a third one, yeah, I mean, Vegas, pick one, Vegas or Minnesota or Edmonton, LA. LA should be able to close this thing out. I think they're going to win. They don't lose at home. So I think they're winning tonight. But, man, if they lose this series, sorry to Edmonton, what a missed opportunity. I'm seeing a lot of memes out there of the Bouchard stuffing Byfield at the blue line. I mean, you got to get that out there. And they're riding their top 4D very hard and not really playing the bottom pair in LA. And they had such a huge opportunity to take one of those 2 games in Edmonton, and they blew them both. We never even talked about that challenge. Like, what more can you say? Like, how terrible it was.
Like, if they lose this series, we will look back at that challenge as the turning point in the series. I mean, they were still up 2-0. It was 4-4 in the game. There was 3-4 minutes left to give Edmonton that sort of an opportunity. Like I always say, the juice was not worth the squeeze. It wasn't even close. And I mean, they capitalized in 10 seconds. I'm sure guys on the bench were probably thinking, what the heck are you guys doing with the challenge? And listen, it did not go well. And listen, they haven't been able to hold leads in the third period. A team that's been so good defensively. You know, I said this, I think, to Dusty yesterday, but who do you think was in more panic mode after Game 4? The Kings or the Jets? I mean, with the way things went and what Edmonton has done and the fact that the Oilers are the opponent, I think we might even make the argument that it was LA. Anyways, we'll see it tonight. That is going to be a heck of an awesome. You're going to need a double TV action. Maybe sit down at your local bar and get them to put the right channels on if they know how to do that.
Yeah.
You never know, Reem. As you well know, you never know.
I've taken the role as that guy when we go out who asks them to put on the TV. And yeah, I mean, it's complicated these days. It's a lot of different channels, sometimes streaming only. I don't know if people have that. So you need to know, there's different cable providers too. Like someone that says what channel. I don't know the number. Like growing up, you knew all the channel numbers, 13, TSN.
29, 47.
Yeah, 29, 47. You knew all that. You think I know what channel Sportsnet is on my cable package? I have no idea. I type 1 something, it takes me in the region, and then I go to it. So, what are we talking about? Put the TV at a bar? Yeah. Hopefully they know how to put it on where you are, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask. I'm always that guy. So make sure someone else take the role.
Yeah, I got to give credit to Hasbeek, Greg, last night. He and I went and we were looking for something to eat, and we were in the Village. Mm-hmm. We went into Carlos and Murphy's.
They didn't have the game on.
Dude, they had like CNN. It was the Canadian election. CNN was on a couple of TVs. I think the playoffs were on one, but again, it was busy. And we sat down in this sort of corner, and Greg just took control. Went, hey, can we get the game on, please? Can you put it on that TV? Staff was great. They got it done. Mm-hmm. We watched the Tampa, Florida, crushed an enchilada and a cerveza. Listened to some trivia in the booth behind us, and then went over and I ended up going back and I did not watch the Avs Dallas game. I watched the election.
You did?
No comment on that. I'm not diving into those streets, but I did pay attention to that quite late last night, and now nothing else matters other than Game 5 tomorrow night. Although I would be in for 4 big games tonight in the Stanley Cup Playoffs to sort of get us ready for tomorrow.
I watched a bit of Dallas, Colorado. I actually watched the Gabe Landeskog documentary that came up with documenting his 3-year recovery from multiple surgeries and how hard he worked to return. Really amazing stuff that he came back and scored. But for Dallas, I mean, that's a team that we're saying they're done. No Robertson. No Heiskanen. They're playing against Colorado. The Dallas, they're cooked. Well, they're up 3-2 now. I mean, they were playing so bad, giving up so many shots. They blew that lead to Vancouver in the regular season. Well, I think we can put to bed, Huss, like momentum from the regular season carrying in the playoffs. As we saw last year, the Jets with the 7-0 win over Colorado. And then
series. Well, listen, I don't think Dallas has been particularly good. I mean, overall, they won Game 1. They lost Game 1 at home, and Colorado was clearly the better team. They were trailing in the third of both Game 2 and Game 3, and credit to them for finding a way to get a goal and get it to OT. Mm-hmm. They win both of those games in overtime. And listen, hey, they don't ask how, they just ask how many. But we all know that OT games can be somewhat coin flips. And they got absolutely steamrolled in Game 4. But for them to come back home and Wyatt Johnson to score 9 seconds into the game last night, absolutely huge for Dallas. They didn't look back. Nate Dogg was pissed off at Coyle on the bench. I don't know if you caught that at one point. And it just sort of fell apart. So, listen, for all that we're feeling here in Winnipeg right now with the tenseness going into Game 5, it's everywhere in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The stakes are high. Every West series tied at 2 going to Game 5. Might be a good time to hit that over 2.5 West series to get to 7 games at plus 130 over with our friends at Coolbet. By the way, I know Jake's been listening, and I think he just threw up my Hail Mary. I'm just going to see if that is up here. Yeah, here we are in the exclusives. Huss's Hail Mary. And, oh my God, a huge boost too. So Leafs Sens, taking the Sens. Wild to beat Vegas, Edmonton to beat LA. It was plus 1364. Now it's plus 1580.
Whoa.
So listen, you want to throw 5 or 10 on that and ride with me on it? Let's do it. It's up in the combo cards, along with the nice little Patty Knows puck for tonight. Who's Patty got here? Nylander a point, Jarvis a point, and Fiala a point. Boosted to plus 291. I don't mind that. We've got a Blue Jays hit parade. Bo, Vladdy, Santander, and Springer all to get a hit. That hasn't been happening enough lately to make me feel confident for that. And then plus 131 for the 4-1 wins for the Hurricanes and Leafs. If you like the Leafs and Canes, that one's boosted to plus 131. Who's the Lamplighters tonight? Matthews, Kaprizov, Draisaitl, boosted to over 10-1. I actually like that one. I think I might I think that'll be a worthwhile one too. So, hey, listen, we got great hockey tonight. Nothing beats the first round of the playoffs. So hit the combo cards. You know it's all there. And, of course, CFL draft getting ready for 5 p.m. Turn your notifications on. A little later on, we'll have a Game 5 preview with Lyss and Connor coming up on the YouTube channel a little later on this evening. And, of course, a huge show tomorrow to get you ready for Game 5 tomorrow night at Canada Life Center. Cannot wait for it. We will have Murat Atesh with us and Cam Jansen from the Cam and Strick podcast, Andy Strickland's partner. He's going to be joining us from the St. Louis side of things. We'll hear from the coaches, from the players, from the morning skate, have all the latest for you to get you ready for Game 5 tomorrow with a live edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily at 1 o'clock p.m. Great stuff from Connor and Lyss today. Check them out later on tonight on the channel. Huge thanks to John Hodge, Jeff Hamilton, and Mike McKenna was awesome. If you popped in late, get to the start of the program and check that out. You will not regret it. Huge thanks to the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day, and all of you for hanging around with us. Enjoy the pucks tonight, and tomorrow we fire it up and get ready to bring the noise and bring the whites to Canada Life Center and see whether the Jets can get back on top of this best of 7 first-round series against the St. Louis Blues. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Have a great one. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. here on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.